Or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Locals in Abingdon in Oxfordshire have signed a petition to keep the name of their local pub, and it's called The Midget. Now, this comes after a university lecturer led an 11-month campaign to change the name of the pub, and the owners, Green King, have caved in. But locals are fighting back, and GB News spoke to one resident, Leanne Thompson, for her thoughts earlier today.
I'm not feeling great about it, to be honest. You know, it's a pub that's been here for a very long time. It's called The Midget after a MG car, and they're changing it to the Roaring Raindrop, which a lot of people are not happy about. We know why they're changing it, but a lady apparently came in who was very upset at the offensive term for the name midget. But nobody here sees it as an offensive term. You don't see the midget and feel any kind of offence towards that. It's named after a car. If she was to actually come, she might actually know more about it, but apparently she's not even been into the pub. She's just heard about it and broadcasted on social media that she wanted the name changed because it's offensive, which as locals don't feel that way. It's the midget. It will always be the midget. And if you look, it's even still on Midget Close. So I don't know if they're going to change it to the Roaring Raindrop Close.
Do you know, you should walk into the Midget now and go, do you serve shorts? And just keep going on the joke. It's named after a car, the MG Midget, that was manufactured in the town of Abingdon for a while. The car was released in 1961. The boozer was built in 1974, giving huge pride to the area. It wasn't named after midgets, you know, the Snow White and the 7 vertically challenged individuals variety. It's named after a car.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Alex Armstrong, Chloe Dobbs, Charlie Rowley and Benjamin Butterworth. Tonight on the show...
Scrap the City of Culture Awards.
As 1,300 migrants have crossed the Channel since Christmas, the Home Office has got the nerve to say they're protectors of women and girls.
Sadiq Khan bans ads in favour of farmers.
Woke Whitehall demands 3-day working week. It's a disgrace.
And Farage is a delusional granddad if he thinks the young are voting reform.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Very good evening, you lovely lot, and welcome to the Saturday 5. Well, it's a New Year special, I guess you could call it. I'm Darren Grimes, your host, and boy, oh boy, do we have a show tonight. Strap yourself in, because if you thought that 2024 has been a mess, wait till you see what Labour's got cooked up for 2025. Let's start with Sir Keir Starmer. After years of telling us that he's the second coming of Tony Blair, promising change, growth and a shiny new Britain free from cronyism, what's the first thing he does when he gets into office? No, not Lord Ali's garbs. He asks UK regulators for ideas to boost growth. That's right, 14 years of Labour in opposition, and their big plan is to ask, has anyone got any bright ideas? It's like watching a bloke who spent the entire party drinking someone else's wine. When it's suddenly his round, he remembers he's left his wallet in the house. Classic Keir. Now, if you're feeling the pinch this new year, don't worry. Labour's got you covered. They're offering 6.6 billion quid in loans for solar panels. Absolutely brilliant. Because what we really need in Britain, in the dead of winter, is more solar panels. I mean, I'm just sure, I'm confident that the sun's just waiting to come out and help us in January. The sun will come out for Miliband. I tell you what, Muppet Miliband, give us North Sea oil and gas. You can pop your solar panels on your lovely multi-million-pound townhouse alongside the migrants you've got living with you. I've no doubt, right? Right? Come on, Millie. And then, in a move that'll really warm your cockles, if by warm you mean freeze your soul, Angela Rayner has decided that councils should have the power to fine you for absolutely anything that they fancy. Minor dismisdemeanors, actually, I can't even say that word. It's like the Soviet Union in Britain today, but there's more veganism, and less vodka. And frankly, it seems like this government have been drinking pretty much any heavy stuff they can get their hands on. You've got to laugh, because in 2024, we've gone more mad than anything else. You're more likely to get fined for actually laughing than breaking the law in any meaningful way. We've swapped the circus, but the clowns are very much still in charge, only they've promoted to ringmaster Sir Keir Starmer. Well, joining me tonight to help untangle this absolute disaster are my merry band of misfits: Alex Armstrong, Minister of Common Sense in a World Gone Mad; Chloe Dobbs, Secretary of Spicy Takes and Even Spicier Opinions; Charlie Rowley, head of Is That a Tory Safe Seat Up for Grabs? And Benjamin Butterworth, our jet-setting greeny Grinch and official party pooper. Let's get into it. You know the drill by now. Each host outlines an argument about a chosen topic, then we all pile in and the first starts to fly. And of course, we want your views as well. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget your questions for Ask the Five. There's a special one tonight. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday Night News with Sam Francis.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has apologised to Azerbaijan for a Christmas Day plane crash that killed, sadly, 38 people. But he stopped short of admitting that Russia was to blame. The aircraft, reportedly hit by shrapnel from Russian air defence systems, crash-landed in Kazakhstan after being forced to divert from Chechnya. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Moscow of spreading disinformation, saying the damage did resemble a missile strike. US officials have also said Russia is responsible, while Azerbaijan believes the crash was caused by external interference. Investigations are now underway, with various teams examining the crash site. Nigel Farage says that Elon Musk is an absolute hero to young voters and claims he'll help Reform UK to win them over. In an interview with The Telegraph, the Reform UK leader hinted that Mr Musk could make a reasonable-sized donation, insisting it would be legal and above board. It comes as Farage has demanded an apology from Kemi Badenoch after she accused Reform of faking membership numbers. The Tory leader says Reform's online tally, overtaking registered Tory members, she says smells of fakery. Farage, though, has denied those claims, calling them baseless. Heavy fog has continued to cause delays and cancellations at some of the UK's busiest airports today. The majority of flights at Gatwick and Stansted were affected this afternoon, and delays are predicted late into tonight. A number of other delays were also reported at Manchester and Birmingham airports, with dozens of flights delayed at Heathrow. Well, the knock-on effects from Friday's delays also meant planes and pilots were out of position today, leaving some passengers stranded. Earlier, independent travel correspondent Simon Calder told us people need to check before they travel.
We saw over 150 cancellations yesterday, 48 from Gatwick, to and from Gatwick, 42 at London City Airport, 40 at London Heathrow, plus some at Manchester, Luton and other airports. And on top of that, I'm afraid Saturday hasn't begun brilliantly. British Airways has cancelled 18 flights so far to and from Heathrow, another 4 at Gatwick, and there's cancellations also at London City. So if you are flying today, good luck.
Simon Calder there speaking to us earlier. Well, boost growth or get out of the way. That is the message from Sir Keir Starmer to UK regulators. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Business Secretary have all asked watchdogs, including Ofgem and Ofwat, to propose pro-growth reforms by mid-January. It follows figures that show the UK economy flatlined between July and September. Labour, though, says it is pulling every lever to deliver the highest sustained economic growth in the G7. The Conservatives blame the government's policies for stalling progress. GB News can reveal today that 1,300 migrants have now crossed the English Channel since Christmas Day, as hundreds more crossed today. It comes as the Home Office confirmed 305 people arrived yesterday in 5 small boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for scrapping Conservative measures like the Rwanda plan, saying that Labour's approach is an insult to the British people. The Prime Minister, though, has promised to smash the gangs, but that comes as more than 22,000 people have so far arrived since he took office, up 25% on last year. US President-elect Donald Trump has made a last-minute plea to the Supreme Court to delay an upcoming nationwide TikTok ban while he works on a political resolution. Congress had passed a law earlier this year banning the popular video-sharing app as of January the 19th, if it's not sold by its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, by that date. US officials and lawmakers had accused ByteDance of being linked to the Chinese government, which the firm denies. And would you believe Easter eggs are already hitting the supermarket shelves before even New Year's Eve? Spotted in stores like Tesco, Morrison's and Sainsbury's, customers have taken to social media to share their surprise, with one user joking Jesus hasn't even been born yet. While some shoppers called it superficial and consumerist, others say it's forward-thinking from big brands preparing early for Easter coming up on the 20th of April. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam. It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for a very lively, festive special. Let's crack on with tonight's first debate. I'm going to abuse my position like Sir Keir Starmer and take over first. Well, Sadiq Khan, remember him? Sir Sadiq Khan, soon enough. My blood pressure, I tell you. He's the gift that keeps on giving. The London Mayor has decided to ban an advert from the National Farmers Union. The people who keep our bellies full are now public enemy number one for daring to raise awareness about Labour's family farm tax. But hold your horses. Khan's Transport for London, they had no issue plastering the tube with ads from pensioner Harmer Starmer's assisted dying campaign. They had no problem with the vegan brigade being wall-to-wall, or even a controversial Islamic preacher holding a briefcase full of burning US dollars and other political causes. They're all good, apparently, but farmers, you barber-clad far-right fascists, do one. Too politically controversial, apparently. This isn't about advertising policy. This is about silencing anyone who doesn't march to the lefty drum. Khan's London is all about pushing the agenda, and that includes silencing dissent to the covering of the countryside in solar panels that work about as well as Starmer's sycophancy towards Lord Ali. Hearing from the people who actually feed us is apparently just too much for the delicate sensibilities of Labour's London-dwelling elite. The NFU had 40,000 quid set aside to spread the word about British farmers being the backbone of this country. Now, instead of a little poster campaign, we're left with the usual. Labour's posturing political pygmy, trying to shut down anyone who dares to disagree. Well, guess what, Sadiq? You can try to silence the farmers, but you'll just make their voices even louder. I look forward to the next protest. And as for your knighthood, well, I wouldn't risk telling you where you can put your medal. I'd be banned from the tube for life. Well, he gets my blood pressure going. I don't know about any of... I don't even live in London, but he gets my goat.
You know, I'm a born and bred Londoner, I say it all the time, and this city has gone so far downhill since he's been mayor, and of course he's the police and crime commissioner for the city as well, and look how that's gone. We've got thefts every 10 minutes of people's their mobile phone out in the city, let alone the rise in knife crime and other violent crimes. The man is completely devoid of any political astuteness whatsoever. Obviously, he's kept up those advertisements of I think it's a gambling site or a money transfer site that show that Islamic cleric who has made homophobic and many other comments in the past. So this is just, again, you know, he's not able to get rid of that one, but he's able to stop this one. I mean, you know, what does that tell you? It's all political, isn't it, despite him saying that it isn't?
Yeah, that controversial cleric ad was outrageous. I don't know if you remember it, Chloe, from back in not too distant past. But the fact of the matter is, you know, they're saying you can't have political ads and it's a blanket ban. It's clearly not a blanket ban.
It's only when it suits them.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that at the moment the Labour Party is doing as much as they possibly can to make rural communities despise them. They're really showing themselves with every move to be a metropolitan elite. We had the inheritance tax on farmers that, we saw them all protesting on Whitehall. We then had them announcing the other day that they want to ban the Boxing Day trail hunting, which I think will achieve absolutely bugger all, aside from annoying everybody in rural areas. And now this, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, from the Labour Party, saying we don't like this advert because it's pro-farming.
I mean, Charlie, the reason they want it in London is because obviously that's where all of the policy makers reside, especially during the week. So why do you think this deliberate curtailment of a farmer's rights to protest and actually the union, this is the party of unions, but not apparently when it comes to rural affairs?
Well, that's absolutely right. And it goes to the heart of this two-tier policing situation where you can see protests take place for a particular cause, weekend after weekend, grinding London to a standstill. But poor old farmers that keep food on the table, that keep the nation fed and watered, don't get a look in. Yes. And, this is a guy who everybody pointed to say, look at London. It's lawless London, crime is up. They lost a by-election in Uxbridge because of that terrible ULEZ policy that does absolutely nothing for the environment, just a tax on drivers. People were looking at Sadiq Khan as the Labour leader of London. That is now something that is that has gone on to the Labour Party to lead the UK. The UK is suffering from Sadiq's drain.
Yes, I do. Before we move on to Benjamin Butterworth, which I'm sure you all can't wait for, I do have to apologise for Chloe's potty mouth there. Apparently she said a naughty word.
Oh, really?
Yes.
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 Oh, I didn't hear it.
The B word.
Yeah, Butterworth.
Yes, it was Butterworth. It was. Benjamin, you must admit that this is naked politics.
No, I won't admit anything. Well, look, we had an election in London only a matter of months ago, and Sadiq Khan was returned overwhelmingly against a woman called Susan Hall, who's probably not the most famous woman in her own house. So it's clear that Londoners like Sadiq Khan. It continues to be a metropolitan, modern, global city, and I, for one, love it. Even if all of you lot like your little England ways, I like it.
So why are all the rich saying, I'm done with this, I'm off, I'm going to go to the United States where the tax rates are better and I'm not being stabbed to death on the streets?
Well, they're not all saying that at all. We had £60 billion, and that's billion, of investment in this country, the highest ever from an investment summit. But on the question of farmers, these are farms worth most likely more than £3 million that will be affected. And you have seen rich people, Jeremy Clarkson is one of them, who have been buying up thousands of acres of farmland. And what does that do to the price for young farmers? It means they can't afford to buy land. I'm glad that someone is bridging that gap and making it easier for young people to get on the ladder, and for Jeremy Clarkson, who told the Sunday Times in 2021, that he was doing it to avoid inheritance tax. Good.
Yes,
slap him.
He was talking about building a shoot. He was building a shoot, not the farm. And now he's got the farm. He's saying this isn't about someone like him. He's rich enough to take the hit. This is about the family farmer who don't agree with you, despite the fact you're making the argument saying that they're the ones this policy is for. They're saying that this will deny them the opportunity to take on their family farm.
Do you know what? I think people have a lot of problems at the moment, and the idea that the biggest threat this country faces is those with more than £3 million of assets being asked to pay half the inheritance tax of everyone else on a higher rate over a 10-year period. I think the country has got bigger bills to fill than wealthy aristocratic landowners.
You say this about pensioners. You make out that because they've got assets, it's not their fault that the house prices have gone up.
It's not my fault either, is it?
It's not farmers' fault, but you want to damage food security and pensioners' livelihoods.
It's not farmers' fault, but I tell you what,
screw loose. I really do.
It's rich landowners' fault that are buying up all the land to avoid inheritance tax and cutting out the farmer himself or herself.
We'll have to move on from that one, but all I can say is Sadiq Khan. Alex, what have you got?
Well, 2025's around the corner, isn't it? We've got a new year and a new city of culture. And who do you think is getting this lovely, lovely award for City of Culture, giving the gusto and the innovation and the creativity of a British city? Is it Bath, with its Roman heritage? Is it York, with the medieval prehistoric buildings? Is it Edinburgh, with its great contribution to philosophy, poetry, and other great British innovations? No, my friends, it's going to be Bradford. Yes, Bradford, of all the places. Bradford, with its 170% the national crime average, with its highest unemployment rate in Yorkshire, with its second largest Pakistani-born community in the country, and of course, home of the grooming gang scandal. Now, the government have already pledged 10 million to Bradford as a city of culture to celebrate things such as arts. And the Labour government the other day announced a further 5 million in the hope that it will produce 6,500 jobs. Well, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Giving Bradford the city of culture is akin to giving Putin the Nobel Peace Prize. Bradford represents everything that is wrong with Britain. It represents mass immigration, failure of assimilation, and wasted government money spent on cities that are dying at a rapid rate. This is a slap in the face of all of those hard-working British cities that deserve to be commended for their contribution to our country. So I say, until we have common sense politicians with pride in Britain, we should give it up, scrap this silly award, and give the money to cities that actually deserve it.
Well, I think you're doing a great disservice to all those people who've married their cousins.
Have you ever been to Bradford?
Producers from Bradford.
No, and I don't particularly wish to go.
Do you know what? You often sit here and say that people like me are the elite that are snobs and look down on people. That is the most snobby 2 minutes I've heard in my whole life. The idea, hang on. The idea that just because Bradford is relatively poor, and it certainly has some serious crime issues, that they can't have culture, that they can't have art. The whole point of this is that people that don't have access to the opportunities of born and bred Londoners, as you just described yourself, I don't think whether you live in Zone 1 London, you should be the only place where you get access to art and culture and those careers. I think putting 15 million quid into Bradford for those young people to get that access is a good thing.
Benjamin, I don't disagree that we shouldn't spend our money in London. I don't want the Labour elite to grow, and I was born in a poor part of London in Zone 6 or 7, just for the record, by the way. But Bradford does not represent culture of
How do
Britain.
you know?
Well, I just listed all the reasons why. It represents all the things the British public want to change about this country. So giving it this City of Culture award in itself, you can say we're going to give some money and invest it into a poor city like Bradford. That's fine. But to call it the City of Culture is exactly the backwards thing that most people see as this out-of-touch government.
Yes, but would the money not make it this bustling metropolis?
I think people are going to get off the train at Bradford and go, oh, my God, if this is British culture, send me somewhere else. I'd rather go to Paris, and that's not much better.
Yeah, I don't think that there is anything wrong with investing money in communities that are run down, need a new lick of paint. But don't lie and say, oh, this is because you're the City of Culture and you've got an amazing art scene. OK, just admit this is a city that's run down, needs some investment to create some jobs and, you know, get it thriving again. Just say that. Be honest about it.
I mean, it has got an airport, so you can leave Bradford, which I think most of us probably would.
They should have invested in that one, actually. They should have invested in the airport.
Bradford Airport, people will leave.
Listen, I have nothing against the people of Bradford. I have something against... I have something against calling it a city of British culture. I mean, we have such great cities in this country. Surely we can celebrate some of them. And some of these cities have done exceptionally well despite the conditions they've had to operate under. Surely we can do more.
But it goes to Chloe's point, because, you know, the whole point of levelling up under Boris was to make sure that the communities that were run down, that did need the funding, got funding and got better. But to give them awards in particular areas where actually you're just sort of tick-boxing or making sure that people are happy.
But you've got terrible news. The airport is in Leeds.
It's Leeds, Bradford.
Leeds, Bradford.
It's not. It's Leeds. Has it moved?
Build an airport.
Well, my boss has just emailed in and he said, Darren, why are you dressed like you're popping to the shops?
Oh, well.
I feel like I'm on an episode of Trini and Susanna.
You're off to Bradford.
I'm off to Bradford, the City of Culture.
Yes.
Right. Still to come tonight, civil servants are threatening to strike over the audacious request that they work from the office for 3 whole days a week. Well, how will they cope? But next, the Home Office has a new campaign promising to protect women and girls. But how does this marry up with the endless stream of illegal migrants crossing the Channel? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The way in which children are being driven online because we're not taking them seriously offline. And what we're tending to do is seeing the problems entirely on the social media, forgetting the fact that we've given up on children being able to work independently and play independently outdoors. We've basically created a world where the digital bedroom has become this go-to area for a lot of young kids. We've given up on old-fashioned parenting, where we try to cultivate their resilience. And now we blame everything, all the problems that occur online. You have to remember that if you take something like bullying, bullying doesn't have to only take place online. It happens all the time, offline, in everyday life. But yet we only see the problem on the social media, and there's this obsession with the social media where every single problem that afflicts childhood is blamed on it. And that distracts us from actually understanding what we're doing wrong with children. So for me, and I hate when I see children with digital technology, when I see them with smartphones. I'm not a fan. I'm much more concerned about the fact that parents use their digital phones when they're having dinner with their kids and giving very bad examples in relation to that. But the real problem, it seems to me, is offline, and that's why we've got to crack the issue. So for me, the banning issue is entirely a headline-grabbing political gambit. And I think that we should be much more focused on the real problems rather than delude ourselves that anything will improve.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. I have had the Mayor of Bradford on the phone, and all I can say is Alex has been banned.
Oh no!
Yeah,
how will I cope?
Been banned.
How will I cope?
Hang on, we've got some emails in favour of Bradford. Poor Bradford. Martin. Oh no, this is about farmers. We'll get to Bradford in a second. Martin says, "Farmers, bring your muck spreaders." I hope this isn't about Bradford. Bring your muck spreaders and show Khan what your new poster actually says. And Mari says, has Benjamin been to Bradford please come to Bradford with me and I'll show you some British culture. It's pretty cool and full of good... I don't know why Benjamin's getting it in the neck.
Because they like me. Yeah, Benjamin, cool. How dare you talk about Bradford like that?
And full of good people. And Philip would like us all to know that Bradford has a museum now.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. What's in it? Benjamin Button.
It's a National Media Museum with IMAX.
Oh, right.
Cinema.
There you go. Maybe we should do a GB News special in Bradford.
I'll book at once.
Yeah.
I'll book at once.
Yeah. All right, now it's time for our next debate. Who is going next?
It's me.
Oh.
Isn't it a bit rich for the Home Office to claim that they're protectors of women and girls when we've just found out that another 1,300 illegal migrants have crossed the channel since Christmas? They've put out a new campaign video on Twitter claiming that they're doing everything that they can to protect women and girls from violence. They say, I quote, "We promise to do everything in our power to protect them from violence." This is the Home Office that has turned a blind eye to swathes of young men, undocumented and unvetted, coming to our shores. And they never deport anybody that is dangerous from this country. This is the Home Office that has absolutely devastated communities by dumping hundreds of young men into hotels without consulting the community whatsoever and asking what they think about the safety risks it poses to their children. For example, Altrincham has just had the Home Office dump a whole load of young men there in a hotel right by an all-girls school and a primary school. You really think that that is protecting women and girls? I just heard a recording of a phone call that Darren posted to a hotel in Deanshanger that's housing illegal migrants from a terrified mother telling them that their residents are standing outside the school gates every single day taking photos of young children. Is that protecting women and girls? I don't think so. And the Home Office, they don't deport foreign criminals after they've done their sentences either. And data from the Ministry of Justice has revealed that in just 1 year, foreign offenders that were released into the community but avoided deportation committed 10,000 crimes altogether in just 1 year. So my question to you lot is, do you think the Home Office can really claim to be protectors of women and girls?
Benjamin?
Oh, straight to me. Well, look, the fact is that things like banning or introducing a new law that specifically affects spiking is definitely a good thing. There's been a rise in spiking in recent years, and lots of campaigners, mainly women, have said that's something they want. The fact that we're getting more police officers because our streets have definitely become lawless is a problem. But do you know what? I think anybody that rejected the issue of these people coming over in boats would be deeply dishonest because, 1,300 people, you said, since Christmas Day is alarming. But, you know, you have to put those people somewhere. And the idea that they are all monsters who are out to do heinous things to women is totally unfair.
I am not. That's
you are putting words in her mouth.
To suggest that I'm saying every single person that comes here on a boat is someone who's going to abuse a woman. Absolutely not.
Lots of them have endured extreme trauma and want to build new lives.
Of course, absolutely. But I don't think that you are some sort of racist for suggesting that people who are coming across here, a lot of them from countries with the worst records in the world for their treatment of women, are coming here undocumented, unvetted. There was a story earlier this year, just one example, a Channel migrant raped a woman just 40 days after arriving on our shores. I think that that is very concerning. And I think the things that the Home Office suggested in that video they put out about stopping spiking and online stalking, yes, those are all good things, but they're missing the elephant in the room that is concerning all the people and all the mothers in this country at the moment.
Chloe, I don't think you're on hiding or nothing with Benjamin, basically, because he can't even define a woman. Never mind find it in him to be concerned about women. Listen, I think you're absolutely on the money, and I definitely think that Benjamin is, again, on a hiding to nothing. So many hidings that he's starting to look like the back end of a donkey. And the fact of the matter is, if you take into account the fact that they're paying thousands of pounds in order to get here from France, Albania are offering on TikTok deals for migrants to come over, young men to come over, thousands of pounds you're talking, package holidays, basically. And you're saying, oh, woe, these people are the most oppressed people in the world. They're in France, Benjamin. They're in France.
But most of them are from countries like Afghanistan. We know that, right? Because the acceptance rate is more than 90%. But Albania is a country we managed to largely solve it with, because most Albanians are coming here for organised crime, for drugs and for violence.
But they're still coming.
And now, actually, the biggest country coming over on boats is Vietnam, which is a very poor country, but not a country at war. The answer to that is to try and get an agreement with the Vietnamese government like we have to fix it with Albania.
No, the answer to that, in my opinion, is to build a holiday camp of a sort of detention centre.
Sounding a bit dodgy.
To put people, the migrants that arrive here, arrest them, put them in this camp, and then they have to stay there.
What does this camp look like?
This camp looks like a holiday camp.
Does it?
Yes.
I think you were saying something rather dangerous there.
I don't. I think that you, once again, are putting words in people's mouths, like the conniving little so-and-so you are.
There should be a holding centre for people to be processed within 24, 48 hours and returned and deported back to. But it goes back to, I think, was it 2002? John Reid, the Labour Home Secretary at the time, said that the Home Office was not fit for purpose. You know, it is still not fit for purpose. What does the Home Office do these days? And I think we've just got to be upfront and clear about, yes, there are a small number of people who I think are making that crossing, and I think it is a smaller number of people that make the crossing who are in genuine need. The vast majority now, it seems to me, of people who cross those small boats are men from Albania, are men from the continent who don't need to be in this country, that don't have a right to be in this country, and they should be deported.
Yeah, well, we need... Look, the most important thing is we call them what they are. They're illegal economic migrants. The vast... I would even go as close as saying 95%
they're not
of
economic
them.
migrants, they're illegal immigrants.
They're risking their lives to come over here, and they are all men. I mean, I saw a video the other day of a Christmas do put on for them in a hotel. All men. I rarely see a female in these boats. And if we're going back to Chloe's question of whether they're protecting women and girls, well, of course, they're not. The Altrincham example is a perfect example where we had the local community informed after the fact it took place. So how can we protect young women and girls when we don't even inform them that there could be a dangerous man amongst these men?
Yvonne says, Saturday 5, the numbers are staggering. There is an imbalance with men and its habits not protecting women. Benjamin doesn't care about pensioners and women. It's not rocket science. Lock them up. Yvonne is a waspy woman. Well, we'll say wasp off.
Buzz off.
OK. Still to come tonight, Benjamin Butterwalk is going to go to town on Elon Musk. Shouldn't he be anywhere near British politics? What do you think? But next, civil servants are threatening to strike after being asked to work from the office for just 3 days a week. What do you make of that one as well? We'll get stuck into Workshire Whitehall next with the Saturday 5 Live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for all of your messages. And, well, actually, one of our viewers asks, has Bradford got a Pride Parade? I don't actually know, has it?
Almost certainly, yeah.
Oh, really? What, 2 people?
Our producer from Bradford's not aware of
It probably
one.
has a counter-protest.
Yeah.
The counter-protest is bigger for Pride in
I have
Bradford.
no idea what you're getting at, but I'm sure Bradford is a very tolerant and welcoming
Oh, well,
place.
I hope you can go and set up the Pride over there, Benjamin.
All right, now it's time for our next debate. Who's going next?
Well, I'll take this one if that's okay. If that's okay, Darren, because as Alex said earlier on, it's approaching 2025, the new year, and you might not be looking forward to going back to work, but you will, as will millions of people up and down the country, because it's the right thing to do. You're hardworking people, you play by the rules, you do the right thing, you need an income. However, the latest group of civil servants who work at the Land Registry Office, yes, that's a real thing, have refused to go back to work for more than 3 days a week, which is being asked of their Labour ministers. Add them to the total of civil servants that work at MHCLG, DEFRA, the Office of National Statistics, the back office people that work at the Metropolitan Police, and your local councils, all refusing to work either more than 5 days a week, so they want a 4-day week, or be in the office for 3 days a week as a minimum. Now, the Land Registry Office, which processes the sale of land and houses, takes 40% of those cases take over a month to process, and in the most complex of cases and sales, 64% take over a year. These people shouldn't be in the office 3 days a week. They should be in the office 7 days a week clearing the backlog. Is this just another case of a failed state where civil servants are not listening to ministers asking them to be in the office? Is this just another case of the civil service letting you, the hard-working taxpayer that will go to work in the new year, are they letting you down?
Well, when I found out you were on the panel, I also wanted to work from home, so I do sympathise with their motivations. Look, you know, the world has changed, Charlie. The ability to do your job, to communicate, to be informed, and do that on a flexible schedule has never been easier. And if you're someone, I often care about retirees, if you're someone that cares for an elderly parent...
Oh, you love one.
If you're someone who has a young child, then the flexibility that doing your job and doing it at home, there might actually be lots of people, really good civil servants, that would otherwise drop out of the workforce without this option.
So I'm all for flexi-working. I'm actually all for people working from home if productivity is high. But the facts and the stats speak for themselves. This is a failing department. Therefore, people should be running to the fire to tackle the problem, not sitting at home with their feet up.
Exactly. COVID was a good test as to which companies work well with employees working from home and which don't. It works better for some and not for others. And clearly, as you say, we've got this huge backlog, complete inefficiency in the civil service. Surely that shows us it's not working with them all at home all of the time. 3 days a week in the office and you get to have 2 days at home. I mean, before COVID, people could only dream of being allowed to be home 2 days a week. I think it's pretty pathetic.
Exactly. And I think if you take the private sector, take any other business where productivity is high, and people who are self-employed, the strivers who are the backbone of the UK economy, these people don't get to sit around for 2 days out of their 5-day working week. They're working...
That's not true, because look at some of the big engines of our economy, banks and financial services. Now, if you go to Canary Wharf, you will see that lots of the big banks, those big companies, are selling off their office space because they're letting their very highly skilled, very highly paid staff work from home, because it's a way to retain talent.
I think it's flexi working. Flexi working is pretty normal now, so they don't need as much... they don't need to be in the office 5 days a week, so they don't need as many office spaces anymore. But
that's my argument.
No, these civil servants are saying they want to be at home all of the time. They're not willing to come in for a few days a week.
Can I just give you a quick fact? Look, if every civil servant worked from the office, there wouldn't be a desk for them all. So it's a bit of misleading. When Jacob Rees-Mogg told them to go back to work, there were no desks for them.
Well, there wouldn't be any desks if I was in charge, because I'd sack half of them.
Yeah, good idea.
Miss Sezzy says we should just sack these woke civil servants moaning about working 3 days a week in the office for dereliction of duties, because they're certainly not performing to any great standard.
I mean, I think you're right. The civil service is a hugely bloated institution. There is a huge amount of waste. There's too many government departments doing absolutely naff all. And quite frankly, 3 days a week is the bare minimum to ask people to come into the office. It's really not going to affect them. And in fact, we've seen that working from home can have detrimental elements to your health, not alone just being lonely, but also your productivity being lower. And in fact, most of the country, now the vast majority of the country, have returned to the office. So why should the taxpayers foot the bill for lazy civil servants who are obstructing government policy most of the time and actually just not doing anything valuable?
Exactly. That's not to say it's all civil servants, right? I do think there are civil servants who are quite likely doing their job.
I mean, what was Sue Gray doing for the last few months? She was still being paid.
Well, she got a golden goodbye.
Well, this is a Labour government also that's asking the civil servants to turn up to work, but they paid off and gave huge pay rises to public sector workers to fend off these strikes, and now you're going to see department after department into the new year bringing this country to a halt because of strike action.
And don't get me started on the train drivers. I mean, people say, oh, Darren, they're not in the civil service. They are in the public sector.
Well, they are now.
They all will be soon, because we're going to be nationalising them. Look how well that's going.
Sleep 3 days a week.
But do you honestly think, Benjamin, that it's acceptable for a civil servant to not be at work when there are backlogs in their own department?
But even
when their department is failing?
You're misleading.
I'm not misleading.
You are
This figures speak for themselves. In 64% of the most complex cases, it takes over a year just to register a bit of grass. I mean, that is ridiculous.
No, I'm going to change your name in my phone to misleading, because that's what you are. You know, the fact
I'm going
is
to change it to mistake.
Very good. Full marks for that. I'm glad you turned up to the office for that one. But, you know, the fact is...
I'm glad you were here for it.
Being at home doesn't mean you're not working, right? And these days, it's got a competitive economy, you know, people in highly skilled jobs, and that's what lots of these civil service roles are.
No profit motive.
But lots of them are really highly skilled. They're underpaid compared to the private sector more often than not. They want that flexibility. They want to look after their family. They want to not avoid... You know, the train prices in this country, Alex mentioned it briefly, you know, they are extortionate. Now, a lot of people, certainly if they're our kind of age, they don't live in central London, but they might have to commute to Whitehall. That's hundreds and hundreds of pounds a month they're saving by working from home.
Well, they get the London waiting allowance, I think, but it's just, I think the point is where the department is failing, when there is the product, that's when people need to be in the office.
We've had a 5-star review in. Someone called Go Fake News says, I wish you lot would work from home and give us a rest from your...
It's called YouTube.
I thought 5 stars was what he was calling us.
No, sadly not.
I didn't know my mum was watching this evening.
Still, mistake. Still to come tonight, Elon Musk's interest in British politics is ruffling some feathers. None more than our own Benjamin Butterworth, and believe me, he has quite the feather piece on tonight, don't you? That's coming after the break. And he says Elon Musk...
There'll be hell to pay.
Keep his nose out of our political business. He'll attempt to justify that after this short break. He's probably going on holiday in the interim. You're with the Saturday Live Live on GB News.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, it's going to remain fairly unsettled for parts of Cyprus and Greece. This area of cloud and rain continues to linger here. But for much of Italy, Spain and Portugal, a fairly quiet couple of days with some late winter sunshine here. A few showers for Madeira, maybe just creeping into Canaries. But as we approach New Year's Day itself, it should be fairly fine and dry across the Canaries.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
1 in 20 people are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder across the UK.
Yes, Health Watch has revealed that men
are more likely to suffer from this than women. Did you know?
Triggers apparently include a decrease in daylight hours, which is certainly happening around about now. If you're leaving the office, it's dark. When you come home, it's dark, as well as the falling temperatures.
Yes, and both of those things happen a lot, don't they, here in Britain? So how can we combat the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder? Well, to discuss this, we're joined now by Dr. Andreas Fonseca, the founder and director of Thrive Mental Wellbeing. Really good to see you this morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, there'll be lots of people watching and listening this morning and saying, what a load of rubbish. It's always been cold in this country. It's always been dark. What is seasonal affective disorder? Is it really a thing?
Well, it is a thing, and it's been known for quite some time. This is not new, really. It is a form of depression. That's what it is. And it's got specific characteristics that kind of differentiate it from other forms of depression. So the reason probably we're talking more about it is because it's basically people are more aware of it and they're recognizing it more. So before you used to be sort of just saying this person's got depression, now you have some specific things to look at that can differentiate it from other kinds of depression, which is quite useful because it's got some specific forms of treatment. So the things that are different about seasonal affective disorder are that for the diagnosis you need 2 years in which you only have episodes during either the late autumn or early winter. So that's when they start, and they fade away by late spring, summer. Early summer. So that's how it works. And you cannot have any episodes at any other time. So it has to be seasonal, specifically seasonal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Dennis, the menace, has messaged in. He's not really a menace, I have no proof of that. And he says, if you're paid by the taxpayer, your entire working day should be subject to 100% scrutiny.
Love it.
Dennis is maybe the civil service would say Dennis is a menace.
Get Dennis in the civil service, he'll sort them out.
And Pete says if civil servants working in London fail to work 5 days a week in the office, they should lose their London allowance.
That's a good point.
Right, now it's time for our next debate, unfortunately, because it is indeed Benjamin Butterworth.
Yeah, make your coffees now. Nigel Farage has claimed that he has a secret weapon to win the next election. Elon Musk. Now, we've heard quite a lot about him recently, but Mr Farage thinks not only can this fella give him maybe tens of millions of pounds in terms of a political donation, but also he's going to win over Gen Z, those youngest voters. He told the Telegraph that Mr Musk is, quote, an absolute hero figure. The shades, the bomber jacket, the whole vibe. Elon makes us cool. Ugh. I mean, this is desperate. The idea that Reform UK is having a resurgence, an insurgence of young people voting for them, just isn't borne out in the facts. A couple of months ago, we had a little thing called a general election. It's how we decide the government when people aren't tweeting petitions and thinking that means something. And how many votes did Reform get? 9%. That's half the Green Party, a fifth of the votes the Labour Party got among that generation. And I think Nigel Farage is looking a bit like a desperate grandad. He wants him to give $100 million to the UK, despite the fact that, I swear, I'm old enough to remember when Nigel Farage said that foreign elites shouldn't be controlling British politics and telling us what our laws should be. What a turnaround. So I say to Farage, you're looking increasingly desperate to get anything for a headline. Gen Z is never going to turn against woke. Now,
well,
Alex, you're there. Well, you're not quite that young, are you? But you're their
we're evidence.
You're their youthful fanboy and fangirl, the cheeky girls of Reform. Do you think there's a change?
I think there's a massive change. I see lots of young people. In fact, I see more young people at Reform than I do at Tory Party conference when the last time I went. There's lots of young people joining Reform. They're very passionate because they're the ones who are being impacted by all this ridiculous wokeness, being told because they're young and white that they can't won't apply for a job, for example, because there must be diversity in this role. They're the exact sort of young people who are missing out, who've got an education, who can't get roles, can't get jobs, and who are sick of it, can't get on the housing ladder. Young people are going to be the people that vote for Reform. We've seen Reform are the second most popular party amongst young people. That is going to rise. And I think that Nigel Farage is absolutely right. Elon Musk is a genuinely intelligent man. He's attracting young people to the party. And we've just seen the party membership numbers surge past the Tories in the last few days.
Yes, I mean, the idea, I've just visualised Alex's Lembit Nigel Farage's Lembit Opie, and Alex as its cheeky girl.
But whatever floats your boat.
Yes. Well, you put the image in everyone's head. And Jane has messaged in. She says, my grandsons are both going to vote Reform next time. Mark says, Butterworth, after 6 months, clearly getting desperate.
What, 6 months desperate? No,
Labour government.
I just think that, you know, the idea that the young people are turning right-wing is not borne out in the facts. And Nigel Farage is trying to create this narrative when actually I think most people look at Elon Musk and think, seriously, mate, you're a bit weird. Very intelligent, I don't doubt it. But I don't think you'd want to have a pint with him.
Well, they all look at Keir Starmer and think, I wouldn't mind getting a pint with him.
I would love to have a pint with Elon Musk, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think young people, just like anybody who doesn't talk like a robot politician reading off of an auto cue. I mean, Keir Starmer, I mean, did you hear his Christmas message and his Christmas lights turn on? I mean, he sounds like some sort of AI robot. Elon Musk and Nigel Farage, the young people love them just because they've got personality.
No.
Nigel's hit 1 million on TikTok now. The youngsters love him.
Nigel Farage is lights, camera, but no action, and that's what's going to trip him up.
Well, Benjamin, there was a great video of Nigel Farage who filled a hall of young people, and they were all waiting to sign his T-shirts, get his autographs. I think some people would have remembered at Tory party conference the images of Nigel Farage rolling up and all the young Tories swarming around him. He's more Conservative than anyone in the Conservative Party. Sorry, Charlie. And that is going to attract those young
We've got
voters.
30 seconds, Charlie.
Well, for a long time, there's been a drain of support from young people from the Conservative Party because they weren't able to have policies like housing to keep them there or to attract them. Reform are filling that void. But the one thing I would say is that Kemi has got to be able to be that sort of plain-speaking to the silent majority of people, which I think, which is why people are going to the right.
OK, well, we've got our big interview coming up. I've got a surprise for you. I'll see you after this break.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland. That will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north, so some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's about Generation Z spending 6 hours a day online. Generation Z, which age group is that?
That's 16 to 24.
OK, great.
Now, this could explain why there's 1 million young people aged between 16 and 24
not working.
in work.
Yeah.
And I did a TV show and we're talking about it, and the lefty person I was on with was making excuses for the fact that we've got 9 million people unemployed. And this woman, this mom, rang in and she was hilarious. And I thought she was going to have a go at me. She said, "Carol Malone." I thought, here we go, another one. And she goes, "You are absolutely right." She said, "I've just thrown my son out of the house, who's 24. She said, my husband and I," she said, "we worked all our lives, 2 jobs, to get him to college, to get him to a private school."
Yeah.
She said, "He hasn't worked a day."
No.
And his attitude was, "Why should I?" And you think... And she said he spends all day online.
On his phone.
All he's
Because
doing.
we would have gone to get a job because we were bored. And the trouble is, Jonathan, the younger generation are never, ever bored because the algorithms keep them stimulated.
Well, the dopamine hits keep coming. I think it's actually a problem for all of us. Yeah. Now, for anyone, if you just have a moment to yourself, a lot of people of all ages, what do we reach for? We reach for our phones, particularly for those, obviously, if we're with a friend, we'll talk to them.
Your age group, you're not talking about...
I know that I've spoken to a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who also will just, if they have a free minute on the tube or whatever, they'll just look at their phone and read. And it's actually terrifying because on the iPhone, every Monday, it tells you how much time you spent on your phone the previous week. And it's,
How much for you?
On average per day?
Fair few hours. I mean, a lot of that will be work.
What's a ballpark? Oh, more than 5?
Occasionally 5, yeah.
Well,
You've got better things to do.
Spending 6 hours a day.
Do you never read a book?
That'll be at night time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, and I'm still along with Alex Armstrong, Chloe Dobbs, Charlie Rowley. It's got the wrong Charlie in there. I threw myself off. And Benjamin Butterworth. Plenty more to come tonight, including: could the swelling popularity of Nigel Farage consign the country to a future of left-wing governance? That's what we'll be debating next. And should the British taxpayer be expected to fund fat jabs? Benjamin's on the prowl. It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Yes, so coming up, folks, we're going to be speaking to the former spokesperson for Reform UK. Someone emailed in saying, "Have you got Elon Musk coming up next?" I'm afraid he's a bit busy with a big spaceship or something like that. Well, anyway, we've got Gawain Towler, who's a good old fox. He's from formerly of Reform UK, still a big supporter of the party. And this comes as the party makes headlines with a little help from Elon Musk. We'll also tackle another 5 fiery debate topics in our bunch of 5, and sparks are guaranteed to fly. Then we'll be answering your questions in a special extended edition of Ask the 5, in which viewers are beamed in to the studio like holograms. Elon Musk must have planned it. First of all, though, it's your Saturday night news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has apologised to Azerbaijan for a Christmas Day plane crash that killed, sadly, 38 people. But he stopped short of admitting that Russia was to blame. The aircraft, reportedly hit by shrapnel from Russian air defence systems, crash-landed in Kazakhstan after being forced to divert from Chechnya. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Moscow of spreading disinformation, saying the damage did resemble a missile strike. US officials have also said Russia is responsible, while Azerbaijan believes the crash was caused by external interference. Investigations are now underway, with various teams examining the crash site. Nigel Farage says that Elon Musk is an absolute hero to young voters and claims he'll help Reform UK to win them over. In an interview with The Telegraph, the Reform UK leader hinted that Mr Musk could make a reasonable-sized donation, insisting it would be legal and above board. It comes as Farage has demanded an apology from Kemi Badenoch after she accused Reform of faking membership numbers. The Tory leader says Reform's online tally overtaking registered Tory members, she says, smells of fakery. Farage, though, has denied those claims, calling them baseless. Heavy fog has continued to cause delays and cancellations at some of the UK's busiest airports today. The majority of flights at Gatwick and Stansted were affected this afternoon, and delays are predicted late into tonight. A number of other delays were also reported at Manchester and Birmingham airports, with dozens of flights delayed at Heathrow. Well, the knock-on effects from Friday's delays also meant planes and pilots were out of position today, leaving some passengers stranded. Earlier, independent travel correspondent Simon Calder told us people need to check before they travel.
We saw over 150 cancellations yesterday, 48 from Gatwick, to and from Gatwick, 42 at London City Airport, 40 at London Heathrow, plus some at Manchester, Luton and other airports. And on top of that, I'm afraid Saturday hasn't begun brilliantly. British Airways has cancelled 18 flights so far to and from Heathrow, another 4 at Gatwick, and there's cancellations also at London City. So if you are flying today, good luck.
Simon Calder there speaking to us earlier. Well, boost growth or get out of the way. That is the message from Sir Keir Starmer to UK regulators. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Business Secretary have all asked watchdogs, including Ofgem and Ofwat, to propose pro-growth reforms by mid-January. It follows figures that show the UK economy flatlined between July and September. Labour, though, says it is pulling every lever to deliver the highest sustained economic growth in the G7. The Conservatives blame the government's policies for stalling progress. GB News can reveal today that 1,300 migrants have now crossed the English Channel since Christmas Day, as hundreds more crossed today. It comes as the Home Office confirmed 305 people arrived yesterday in 5 small boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for scrapping Conservative measures like the Rwanda plan, saying that Labour's approach is an insult to the British people. The Prime Minister, though, has promised to smash the gangs, but that comes as more than 22,000 people have so far arrived since he took office, up 25% on last year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much, Sam. It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes. They've been very naughty during the break. It's making me laugh. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for a very lively hour, yet another one. We're going to crack on with tonight's big interview. Now, Nigel Farage's Surge and Reform Party were, of course, backed by millions of Brits at the ballot box back in July, with their membership numbers already overtaking the Tory party's share of members. Now, let's not forget, this is one of the UK's newest political parties, overtaking Western democracy's oldest. This is no mean feat, small feat. But some pundits are predicting that Reform's growing popularity could split the right wing of the country, leaving us condemned to decades of Sir Keir Starmer in government in Downing Street. Starmer's administration could be considered fairly the worst we've seen in donkey's years. And getting them out of Downing Street, does that not have to be the priority? And if so, are Reform UK really the best vehicle to vote for to do this? Well, to discuss, I'm pleased to welcome former Reform UK spokesman Gawain Towler, who joins us on the sofa there. Gawain, could voting for reform actually pave the way for a Britain where you're taxed to your eyeballs, you're stuck in the net zero nightmare, and you're drowning in small boats full of fighting-age young fellas, while the right tears itself apart in Britain?
Well, I think you might say that apart from that last sentence, we've been there for the last 10 years. So, plus la change, plus la différence. I think that we are there, we're stuck there. But if you look at the poll that's just coming out tonight from More in Common for the Sunday Times, the seat projections are extraordinary. The Tories go up 101 and get within, I think, 5 seats of Labour. And then Reform are coming third with 72 seats, up 67. There's a huge, huge shift going on in the country. And no amount of special pleading on the part of the Conservatives, who seem to think that they have some God-given right to remain the centre-right party of choice in this country, has any say whatsoever. There are large parts of the country that will never vote Conservative again. But they are interested in, and it seems to be polling, in a way to vote for Reform.
Now, if Reform do somehow pull it off, right, and it's obviously a really big ask, will we end up with the same issues that the Tories have seen, right, with a party in disarray, fighting like rats in a sack, or actually unable to action anything with an intransigent civil service?
Well, I think the whole business, you were talking about Musk earlier, what's going on in America with Doge and all the rest of it, we will have 4 years of that before the next general election. And I think we'll be able to point to, if Trump and Musk can get a third of what they want to do done, we'll be able to point to success abroad and point to that when we go into the general election saying, this is possible. This comedy scene where we have Starmer asking regulators almost not to regulate, while at the same time setting up a regulator every week, is a farce. They have no ideas. The regulators have got this quangocratic stranglehold on innovation, in drive, on all sorts of levels. And yes, we will come in with a very strong view on dealing with the regulators, dealing with regulations, freeing up people, freeing up their innovation, letting them breathe and letting them succeed. And I think that attitude, and going in with a hard attitude of that, as opposed to the slightly panty-waist approach that the Conservatives have gone in, having to bring over all those Lib Dems that they seem to always get elected on their side.
Exactly.
Makes it very, very difficult.
Now, Gawain, before I throw to the rest of the panel, I want to ask a cheeky question from one of our viewers, Leaky, who says, can you ask why, Gawain, in your support of reform, after, you've given, 20 years? I don't know how long it is, Gawain. I don't want to age you unnecessarily.
Oh, I'm plenty old enough. Plenty old enough. I'm called veteran elsewhere.
Many years to the cause, and actually, to be booted out. I still support them. Why?
Well, because I believe in the ideas. It's not the individuals. And anyhow, as you point out, I had many years before the mast with Farage and the various iterations of the party, from UKIP to the Brexit Party to Reform. Nobody has a job for life, but that doesn't mean I don't believe in what we're trying to do. It'd be a very strange person who says, I've got this set of beliefs and somebody sacked me, so I'm going to run away and join the Labour Party. I mean, what sort of lunatic would do that? No, I believe wholeheartedly in what we're doing.
I live in hope that the bosses of GB News aren't listening in. But I wonder, Alex, have you any thoughts?
Yes. Well, I really wanted to ask something that my audience asks quite a lot as well, particularly on Twitter when we're talking about reform, and that is the biggest criticism of the party currently is that it hasn't democratised yet. What do you know about plans? Because I know Nigel Farage has said them, I know Zia Youssef has said they're going to happen, but what do you know about the plans to democratise the party?
Well, I've noticed some things. I mean, you can't just wave a magic wand at a structure and just hope it into existence. You've got to do an awful lot of work. But the structure is coming into play. I noticed that, I think, 2 weeks ago, the 400 new branches have been created in the last 6 months. They have now got access to bank accounts. That way they can start fundraising. They can start campaigning more effectively locally. that started to happen. The new constitution was passed at conference. Now, I believe it should be with ELCOM. It should be signed off by ELCOM. When that happens, you then have things like the party board that's in the new constitution, a part of which membership will be elected by the ordinary members. From what I understand, branches will, from a list, an approved candidate list, when people have been vetted and gone through the system, will be able to... if, say, I want to be a candidate, I would pass my vetting, then apply for those seats I'm interested in. At that point, the constituency will have a say. Because if the party has vetted people, then the party has given a stamp of approval. And therefore, the branches should have that say. So this is all happening, but it's not going to happen overnight. This is a huge change to the party structure, and it's definitely in hand. I mean, I've read the documents, I've seen the bank accounts, I've even donated to my local branch. So this sort of thing is happening.
Well, that'll be music to the ears of Ben Habib, who
it will.
Who has a bee in his bonnet on that particular topic.
Ben, I love dearly, and he's very kind.
I love him to pieces as well, but he does have a significant bee in his bonnet over that particular issue.
He does. I mean, he was very kind and actually offered to employ me after I lost my job with the party.
Well, there we are.
But I turned him down because I do not wish... I'm not part... I don't follow it as he does. I don't want to follow him down that track of what's essentially a dog in the manger, sadly. But he's a damn good man.
Yeah, he is. Charlie, you're a man who's always in search of a seat. Have you got any thoughts about maybe crossing the aisle to reform? He used to work for Govey.
I did. I mean, the only seat I like at the minute is this one here next to you, Darren. So
very good, Charlie.
Well regarded.
I thought you meant this one here when you were pointing at mine.
No. That is a safe seat for you.
Oh, well.
Safe seat for you. But great, I wanted to ask, because you talked about that poll, and it's only one poll, so let's not get carried away. But it's, if it is the case that the Tories get 101 seats back, that is still a bounce back for the Conservatives. Of course, 75 for reform is obviously massive progress. There is momentum behind reform at the minute. There's no doubt about that. And you're right when you say there's no God-given right for the Conservatives to rule. However, if it is the case that the Conservatives, as it seems to be at the minute, if you take local by-elections, for example, the Tories seem to be getting councillors back, that there is just going to be, at the next general election, a split between the Tories and Reform, which will let Labour in through the back door again. And I think everybody could agree, I think most people agree, whatever your party stripe, actually, we want to get rid of this Labour government, but it will be at the next election. I think that divide between voting Reform and the Conservatives, which let Labour in through the back door, what can we do? Or is there anything that those two parties can do to unite the right?
I think right now, although looking at the numbers, I hadn't quite done the maths before I sat on the sofa, but I think if one was to add Reform to the Tories and the Lib Dems to Labour, and even the SNP implied, it's very, very close indeed. Centre-right, centre-left. I believe. I haven't got, as I said, I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think it's within touch and go. And then you look at what else the pollster's saying, that a third of the seats, have a less than 5% majority in this projection. Now, that takes a gust of wind to change. So things are very much up in the air. And I honestly believe, and you made the point about council seats, that is true when it comes to seats won, but this is from a standing start for Reform, and they have increased their vote share by 11%, while the Tories have dropped their vote share by 0.2%.
All right.
In those council elections. And then you look at the council elections coming up.
Yeah.
You're going to see a huge change there.
Well, they're going to cancel some of them, though, Gawain. So, I mean...
We shall see.
Not all of them are coming up. Benjamin, you're a man that would quite like them to cancel every election coming up, wouldn't you?
No, I would not. I'm a Democrat, but I just don't want Reform to win any of them. Look, I said...
As a Democrat?
I think Nigel Farage is all lights and camera and no action. And I fear that if you're going to be a serious political movement, one that can be considered to hold power, certainly at local councils, if not potentially government, then you need to attract a team of people. Now, I don't think Farage has ever met a man that he couldn't fall out with. And I fear that, just like UKIP, as David Cameron said, Reform is going to attract more fruitcakes than you've got in a Boxing Day fridge. How do you think you can actually persuade talented, experienced people that the average voter, not the natural Reform voter, can trust?
Well, can I point to Zia Yusuf? Can I point to Nick Candy? Can I point to a whole series of other people who've been coming in, both on the professional side and more publicly, openly, in the political side? It's a different ballgame, chap. It's a completely different world we're living in. And to suggest that Farage doesn't deliver... You know, there was this thing that happened in 2016. It was a referendum, was it? Yeah, that was it. And we delivered Brexit, now with other people involved. But I tell you, if it hadn't been Farage spending all those years fighting that corner with people with him, that wouldn't have happened. To suggest he doesn't deliver, he's probably delivered more in British politics than anybody on either front bench. Seriously.
Right, Chloe, we've got a very brief bite of the cherry for you.
So my question for you, Grain, would be, do you think that defections from the Tory party, for example, Andrea Jenkins, are good for Reform's image as a unique party? Do you think that voters will be disillusioned, thinking that the Reform Party is now just a Conservative party with a new label on it if we take in a bunch of defects?
Well...
Defects.
What?
Oh, Andrea. I don't mean to use defects.
I think rejects, perhaps, not the defects.
Party, just to clarify there.
Well, put it this way. We've got... Reform managed to pick up 4.1 million votes at the last election. If we want to win, we've got to pick up another 6. You do not find that 6 million votes down here on this side of the sofa. You find it on that side. And therefore, we have to expand. We have to take votes and people and supporters from all the other parties. In Scotland, we're taking off the SNP, for goodness sake. Now, when it comes to figures, public figures joining us, I can tell you now that even before I left the employment of the party, looking at the people who are defecting at council level from the Tories and from independents from elsewhere, about a third of those who applied were rejected. What you don't hear about is those people we don't want.
Yeah.
You only hear about the people we're happy with.
How bad were they?
And so that's quite a significant point. We're not just taking any dross that comes across because they've lost their job.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Right.
But the problem is, whilst we're getting a lot of Labour voters, and I think we should be looking forward to a Runcorn by-election any time in the not-too-distant future, but if not only are we taking Labour voters and the by-election that took place in Dudley recently, the by-election that took place in Wolverhampton at council level, we're getting a 30% swing from Labour.
Yeah.
The problem is, for us, when it comes to top-line people, since the Blair Revolution, almost anybody who is working class, who cares about this country, is that patriotic old Labour, has been driven out of the elected levels of Labour. Not their members and not their supporters. So we're picking up their membership, some. We're picking up their supporters in large numbers.
Thank you very much, Gwen. We'll have to end it there. We're running out of time, sadly. I could listen to you all night, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Darren.
Friends, still to come tonight, we'll bring you our review of 2024, and then it's our special edition of Ask the Five. Goodness only knows what hell you've unleashed upon us tonight. And it's a Saturday scrap. Well, that's the Saturday Five. We're live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Britain's Royal Collection of Art is one of the most important and largest in the world. And it's also one of the last great European royal collections to remain intact. And built up over many centuries, it has extraordinary depth. And curators have delved into its riches to produce an exhibition of Italian drawings between 1450 and 1600. There are household names here: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Some of the drawings are complete works in themselves. Some are studies for images that would appear in much larger pieces, and some are anatomical studies which enabled these artists to draw the human form in all its perfection.
This is the earliest drawing in the exhibition of around 1450, and it's made by Fra Angelico, the great Florentine painter. It may seem an obvious thing to say, but we only have drawings like this if they have survived. And these drawings were not seen at the time as works of art. They were workshop studies. They were as functional as a hammer or a paintbrush, if you like, in the workshop. But the fact that a drawing would survive from 1450 to the present day shows that first it was useful, and it was a work that would have been referred to constantly in the artist's studio, and only later was it valued by collectors as an exemplar of the artist's genius, if you like, the way in which we might think of it today. So a drawing like this, which is in almost perfect condition, has got a history of being valued for different reasons from when it was produced to the present.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. PW has messaged in, and PW says, "What's with all the beards?" Well, PW...
Oh, no. No.
Well, PW, all I can say is they're either, you know, trying to hide something, or they're getting ready for their futures in the gulags. That must be what it is.
Well, for me, I've put a bit of weight on over the years, and I realised I've lost it recently, but over the years, if you get a beard, Alex doesn't have this problem, maybe Charlie does, but if you get a beard, it brings back your jawline. So that's my secret.
Jack from Reform's emailed in. He says, Charlie Rowley, Govi's boy. Reform UK did not split the Tory vote. The Red Wall retreated back to Labour. Which is a fair point.
Well, the vote has been split. I mean, if you look at some of the constituencies where Labour would never have held, actually, they've slipped in through the back door because of the split, you know, between...
Do you refer to yourself as Govi's boy?
No.
You know what, you have his accent, you speak just like him.
I don't.
You picked it up from him.
He's a great man, and when you spend a lot of time with someone, you might pick up the odd trait here and there. But I spent more time with him. Luckily, I spent more time with him than Theresa.
And Hedgehog says...
Hopefully not all his traits,
kitty heels under the desk.
Hedgehog says, I'm a new fan of Gwaine Towler. He is great. He put butternuts back in his box.
Well, be careful what you wish for.
Well, speaking of putting butternuts back in his box, it's time for tonight's main event. According to a new poll, 1 in 5 people in Britain would use weight loss drugs if it was free on the NHS. But are these so-called wonder drugs, like Ozempic, a possible solution to the growing obesity epidemic with Benjamin Butterworth, in the UK? And should the taxpayer be funding these fat jabs? That's the key question. Do you think you ought to be on the hook to fund the luxurious overindulgence of bigger people? Well, seconds out, it's round one, and actually we're going to box up Alex Armstrong and Benjamin Butterworth, who are going to take this away. You don't know this, but Alex used to be known as 10-ton Tess on the schoolyard. So, Alex, I'll let you take it away.
No, I'm going to give it to Benjamin, and I was not known as 10-ton Tess.
Benjamin, you take it away.
Well, good evening, fatties. Look, you know who you are. You're scrambling around the bottom of the Quality Street tin, hoping there's still some chocolates left. There's, no pigs in blankets within 30 miles of Hull. That is what Britain is like these days. We have got fat as a nation, and it's made us lazy, it's made us inefficient, it's made us suffer with a lot of health problems. During the COVID pandemic, the next biggest indicator of whether you'd get seriously ill or die after your age was being fat. And so it's costing this country tens of billions of pounds. Frankly, there are too many people who can see the takeaway menu but not their feet. And so that's why I say we need to pay for these jabs that work miracles. You inject them once a month and people lose weight. It changes their lives. Now, obesity costs the country about £98 billion a year, £19 billion on the NHS, and a lot more in terms of health and life expectancy for many people. And so an investment of this, which would cost about 28 billion if a fifth of the country were to take up these diet jabs, well, that would revolutionise our health. It would change the lives of the poorest, who are so often the people with the biggest obesity problems. And I think that would be a fair investment of our money to improve people's lives.
Well, I just do not buy it, Benjamin. I don't buy that the country and people of Britain need to get slim by jabbing themselves every day. I believe if you want to get healthy and you want your body to be healthy, well, eating less is an easy thing to do. I also don't believe that Ozempic is this miracle cure that everyone's making it out to be. In fact, many people have seen horrific side effects by using this jab. It's not even designed for weight loss. It's actually designed for type 2 diabetics. So we shouldn't be jabbing people for the sake of jabbing them. We need to be prescribing people with healthy lifestyles, teaching them how to cook better, teaching them how to make healthy foods. An art we have lost in this country. Cooking, a great British tradition. We see it all the time, but unfortunately people are cooking cakes on TV instead of healthy meals. We have become obsessed with it. Not only that, but this would bloat the already fatted up NHS. It's going to cost the taxpayer £28 billion a year when actually all we need to do is prescribe people a little bit of outdoor time. The reality is that we've become too obsessed with sitting on our backsides watching television rather than living a healthy lifestyle, and that's what we need to change.
Don't mock people sitting on the backsides.
You can sit on your backside and watch GB News, though. That is permitted.
Look, you know, fat people know they're fat, right? They don't need you to tell them. They were aware, you know, they carry more lard than flora. The fact is that it's hard for them to get out of that habit. So many of our foods that we eat casually, are stuffed full of salt and sugar in a way that they weren't a generation or two ago. If all you needed to do was tell people or say go for a walk, well, we would have done it. And we have an issue now where it is such a serious weight on our economy, on people's productivity, that I think you have a responsibility to jab them. And I'd also point out, you know, maybe rich TV presenters like Darren Grimes can afford their own private jabs. But if you're a regular person on a low income, you're more likely to be overweight, you're more likely to have chronic health conditions and a lower quality of living. And so the very people that can't access this help are the ones that the government can help. I think that's a very Labour way to go about government.
Well, I think that's exactly nanny state to the max, isn't it? That's exactly what you said. It's Labour, Labour, Labour through and through. Let's just jab up everybody, and that will make them better. How did that go last time?
It's going to cost for a job.
It's going to cost this country a fortune. The NHS is already spending too much money. We need to slash the fat by getting people out walking and exercising, not by jabbing themselves while they're at home.
All right. So I hear some of the arguments that Alex has to say, but I actually agree more with Benjamin. And
what has happened to this show? Take it off the air. Take it off the air.
I think Ozempic and these jabs are revolutionary. I think that the evidence of what they will manage to do in things like combating early onset dementia, that's an incredible stat. I think Elon Musk, who we both value very much, is on them. He's now moved on to Mounjaro, has even better. It's in trials, the data is even higher than it is on Ozempic. So all of these things, I think, are a feat of a brilliant modern medicine.
I'm not slamming everyone who uses it. There are certain people who really do need this, actually, to be healthy again. However, I just do not think that this is the correct direction for humanity to take. And again, you're going to see this divide between the rich and poor, those who can afford it. I know South Park did a whole episode on this.
That's why the government prescribing health.
Who does agree with Alex?
I partly agree with Alex in that I don't think that everybody who's a little bit pudgy should be taking this drug.
No, but it's people that are obese, clinically obese.
And I think that it can be a good way to kickstart someone's weight loss. But the NHS, if they're going to do that, they need to make sure that they also put the support in place. And I doubt they will, because they're not very good at giving people therapy, to make sure that people are changing their eating habits, changing their exercise habits, so that they can eventually come off this drug. I'm very sceptical of the idea that you can inject yourself with this constantly and not have any damaging side effects.
Well, it even makes people, though, give up addictions like alcohol?
Well, see, this is the thing, is if you've got the addictive gene, you're not just going to struggle with alcohol, you're going to struggle with addiction to food, and there are shelves of
But
food
if you
with
had
addictive
this wonder drug that could get you off that addiction,
Yes,
how marvellous. That saves the NHS millions.
I think for some people in extreme cases, yes, but everyone left, right and centre seems to want to get their hands on this.
Yeah, that's my concern. That's my concern.
So we said extreme cases and then looked straight over at Ben.
The irony is I've lost weight in the last few months and I've done it without any jab.
Well, that's because you've been going to Afghanistan. But no, I do worry because, I mean, there's many people who will see this as a new lifestyle habit rather than actually going, I've lost weight, now I need to go to the gym, now I need to eat healthy. I suspect you're going to get people hooked on this drug for the rest of their lives. And I think it leads to things like depression, and many of them go on to be fat again.
So I think it should be, if it's on the NHS and taxpayers are funding it, it should be a last resort, not a first port.
A last resort.
A last resort for people who, if they've got mobility issues, for example, then can't take up the healthy exercise or can't go for a walk or whatever. So I think it shouldn't be the go-to. And then we still need to do a lot of research about it. I mean, it's a bit like vaping. That's done huge wonders getting people off smoking, but we still don't know the long-term health negative impacts of vaping.
Yeah.
So what will Ozempic... what will we find about that in
there is evidence, because James Corden said he was on this, then he came off it and he ballooned in weight. And so you can't put people on them in perpetuity. No. So is there a plan in understanding the science that people keep the weight off?
OK, right, we'll let the viewers decide. Still ahead, though, we'll bring you our special review of 2024 and an extended version of Ask the Five as you hit tonight's panel with any question that you like. But next up, though, we'll get stuck into MRC, Just Stop Oil. MRC. I'm confused.
HMRC.
Oh!
Do you know where you are?
It's not Manchester.
HMRC, as in the tax revenue body. I see, OK, he was trying to be clever. Just Stop Oil and the bizarre rise of dark tourism. The bunch of five after this short break. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Nicola has emailed in, and Nicola says, "Hi Darren, I'm a type 2 diabetic and a size 8. I'm 55 years old and have been all my life." She's 5'11" as well, so that's thin.
Well, if we want to buy her a dress, we know everything now.
But I wonder if Nicola's been using one of the jabs.
Well, it's designed for type 2 diabetes, isn't it?
Well, yeah. All right. Now it's time for this. Yes, indeedy. It's time for our fire round, the bunch of 5. Alex, what have you got for us?
Yeah, well, we've all been calling for tighter regulations on social media platforms to make sure children can't use it. So anyone under the age of 16, I believe. Places like Australia have already banned it, and I suspect the UK will be following suit shortly. But as part of this crackdown, Ofcom's new guidance demands that social media companies verify those young people's ages. So what they're going to do is use facial recognition to scan your face to make sure you're not underage. And I, for one, think this is a worrying move to Orwellianism, where social media companies will have the pictures and faces of your children on their databases, and I want it to stop. I'd rather not have that. I'd rather have young people using social media. What do you think, Chloe?
I mean, I think that there needs to be some kind of parental responsibility. I think it's kind of on the parents to monitor what your kids are doing.
I agree.
I mean, I am perfectly guilty of breaking the rules, though. I had Facebook when I was 7, and I loved being on all the different platforms. Yeah, I actually got banned from Twitter because they just found out that I made my account when I was 11 years old rather than 13, so I'm probably not one to speak on it. I'm guilty as charged.
But if you had your own kids, though, would you want them to be going on social media at the age of 7?
I think now I'd say probably not, mostly because of the addictive side of social media and how I see it's frying people's attention span. I think my parents trusted me enough to know I wasn't going to be looking at stuff.
Would you not be worried that now social media companies are going to use this facial recognition technology to scan your face? And we know what they've done with our data already. They've been selling it off in droves. Now they're going to have your biometric face printed on their database. I think that's absolutely terrifying.
But isn't that genie already out of the bottle?
Well, sort of, but they don't have your face pictures yet.
Well,
I do think it's a real problem that a lot of parents don't seem to take it seriously when their child is 11 or 12 and there's probably pressure on them. You have to stop them.
All right, Chloe, what have you got?
Is this the final nail in the coffin for Kemi Badenoch and the Conservative Party? Because I had a little bit of hope that maybe she would turn the ship around, and we'll see what happens come 2029. But after what happened over the past few days, where she threw a hissy fit, acted like a little child and told Nigel Farage that he's a fraud, I think they are done and dusted for me. When is she going to apologise?
I mean, Benjamin, I think even you would agree that this has been an absolutely marvellous PR campaign for reform.
Yeah, I mean, when your lot lied about 350 million quid going back to the NHS on the bus, the genius of it was that everyone pointed out that you were a liar. And now you've got the equivalent, right? Kemi Badenoch fell straight into the trap. I think, you know, people will forget about this. Politics moves fast.
Boring!
But it's shown you that she is bad at politics. She's naive. And she speaks before she thinks.
And she's petulant. She just went on the GB News podcast and she said, I don't have gaffes, I think before I speak. Well, that wasn't very well timed, was it, Kemi?
Well, yeah, we've got that video, actually. But, Charlie, as the Conservative Party spokesman, do you think actually this was unwise?
Well, look, yeah.
You might lose your seat if you say it does.
I don't think anybody, if they were going to hold their hands up and say, yeah, actually, this was... I think somebody was trying to be a bit too clever by half and thought that they'd identified something, and, you know, she says what she thinks, and people like that in politics.
I think she should just say she'd had a few too many sherries on Boxing Day and Christmas, and that was what happened.
All right. I want to talk to you about Just Stop Oil. I'm sorry, I know it's Christmas time, but they've got to be mentioned. They're importing thousands of T-shirts from low-paid workers in the Dominican Republic, 4,000 miles away. Low-paid workers, 4,000 miles away. It's been shipped across the world more than Benjamin Butterworth. It's an outrage. Is this saving the planet? Is this what we've all got in mind? Are you telling me my granny has to freeze in order for them to ship T-shirts with Just Stop Oil written on them? I tell you what, I'll buy one. Just spoilt Pratts will be what mine reads.
It's a bit like Donald Trump, isn't it? His Make America Great Again caps, made in China.
No, they're made in the USA.
They're not. They
yes,
say
they are. Charlie bought me one.
They say designed in the USA.
In private. That was a private gift.
Not anymore.
They say designed in the USA, made in China.
No, it says
I think
made.
it does say made in America.
You probably found some knockoff.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The Chinese person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would have posted.
The BB.
Make
One
some
of those
extra cash.
corner shops rather than the
All right.
Trump Tower.
Charlie, what have you got?
Well, this is going to divide households right across the country. You thought Brexit broke up relationships. You thought voting Donald Trump you were going to sort of get rid of your partners for. Well, it is the big debate as to how do you pronounce at this time of year when many people are doing their tax returns and you have to pick up the phone to HMRC.
No.
Oh, God. The Cambridge Dictionary has corrected, after many complaints about pronouncing this tax office aficionado group, that it is actually pronounced HMRC. But there is a growing number of people obviously pronouncing it as H because it's a H, and that's how it begins. And I think it's ridiculous that the HMRC tax officials have got time to tweet out that they that tell us that you can pronounce it either way because HMRC respects diversity, idealect, accent.
There's no diversity.
And pronunciation. So there you go. A diverse HMRC.
Come on. This is ridiculous.
This has divided us all backstage.
No
I can't believe
There's no
it.
diversity to be illiterate. You know, I was raised by my grandparents, and I'm no word of a lie. If I said H instead of H, I would be sent to bed without dinner. Like it was, you speak properly, and you
it's
know.
all fun at your place.
Christmas was
I think it's appalling.
I agree.
HMRC.
HMRC.
I actually say HMRC, but I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
I think you need to learn to speak English if you're going to live here.
Benjamin, what have you got?
Well, if you're planning a New Year's holiday, have you considered Somalia? No? Syria? Afghanistan? Pakistan? Well, it turns out that dark tourism, going to dangerous countries, is an industry now worth more than expected to be worth more than £33 billion as thrill seekers who watch YouTube, and I'm guilty of them, search for these. I think we've got a couple of pictures of my recent trips. The left there, that's me living with a machete-wielding tribe in the Indian Ocean. If you look at those two guys, they've got a cigarette in one hand and a machete in the other, so it was just like London. and then that's me in the hoodie on the other picture, if you're not quite sure. That's me when I travelled Iraq recently, and then I went camping with marsh Arabs in Mesopotamia. I've canoed with crocodiles. Would you do a dark tourist trip? It's all the rage.
To be honest with you, Benjamin, I thought you were being quite racist at first when you said that. And actually, is this not doing the Channel migrant race in reverse?
In reverse.
Is that what all it is?
Clearly, yeah. But unfortunately, these ones come back, so...
But these things... You tried to stop me re-entering, but unfortunately I returned.
Do you relax? Do you relax on these trips?
Yeah, I find... You know what's amazing?
Do you let your
You're
hair
not worried
down?
that someone's going to
I'll tell you who else loves it. Ben Leo, who's on later tonight. He's done trips like that. He's on my team, even if you're not. And the thing is, it's life-enhancing.
That's news to his wife.
It's life-enhancing to go to these places where, you know, the culture is so different, people are different, because most of the world looks like London or Manchester or Bristol, whatever, right? And to go to places that see the world differently...
Bradford, I was going to say. Take a little trip to Bradford.
A very brief response from you. How can you justify advocating dark tourism when there's a climate emergency?
Well, they fuel the planes with lentils.
Well. By the way, Nicola's emailed in saying, no, Darren, I've never used those jabs. That's rude. So I've offended Nicola. I do apologise. I just meant it's a diabetes drug. And, you know, well, I assume you're on some form of medication for diabetes. But anyway, I've been rude to Nix, so I apologise.
Yeah, we've lost one of our viewers.
Yeah, let us know. Still ahead, we answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits. Get your question in, Nicola. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, it's going to remain fairly unsettled for parts of Cyprus and Greece. This area of cloud and rain continues to linger here. But for much of Italy, Spain and Portugal, a fairly quiet couple of days with some late winter sunshine here. A few showers for Madeira, maybe just creeping into Canaries. But as we approach New Year's Day itself, it should be fairly fine and dry across the Canaries.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low.
And it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Christine says, hi, loving the Saturday night crack, Darren. Best comedy on telly. Even wonderful to see Buttons is back. I assume Buttons is you.
Can I say, I said that I'd been canoeing with crocodiles, and a viewer, Jane, said that her dad commented, I didn't know crocodiles could canoe.
Which amused us all very well.
I love a dad joke.
Now it's time for our review of 2024. We've seen some huge news stories breaking over the course of the year. Of course, Princess Kate's heartbreaking cancer diagnosis before she announced in September that she'd completed her treatment. And that, of course, ran alongside His Majesty the King's own battle with cancer too. We witnessed a historic change of government, much to the chagrin of me, after Rishi Sunak announced a surprise early election. That went well, eh, Rishi? Labour romped to a crushing victory that installed Sir Keir Starmer into number 10. and saw hundreds of Tory MPs lose their parliamentary seats. Well, bully for them, Charlie can't even get himself one. And just weeks later, of course, Starmer faced a serious political headache as riots erupted across the country, leading to days of disorder and thousands of arrests. Accusations, of course, of two-tier policing quickly spread across the nation. And things didn't get any better for the beleaguered Prime Minister, as his government's decision in their opening budget to cut the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners left him labelled by some as Starmer Granny Harmer. And Labour will end the year looking sheepishly over their shoulders. And no, I'm not talking about farms, as Nigel Farage's Reform Party continue to disrupt the British political landscape, already attracting more members than the Conservatives, who've come to blows, of course, with Farage again this week. Are they running scared, my friends? So, I mean, your political highlight then? What's been your highlight?
Well, mine is easy. It has to be Keir Starmer finally ending the drivel of 14 years of Tory rule. He's only the fourth person in history to win a general election as a Labour leader. It's an incredible feat. And I feel much better about how the country's going.
That's my low light.
Since he's been elected.
I think it's been an absolute disaster, and I think you're talking out your bottom. And I don't even think you believe that.
I do believe that, absolutely. And I think
Is Lord Ali sending you some cards?
Well, clearly not, no.
Take it back.
What's your highlight?
Well, I think, for me, it's got to be Nigel Farage entering Parliament. I think not only has that given hope to millions of British people who are disaffected with politics, myself included, that we can change politics, but also wasn't it great just to see the rest of their faces as he entered?
Yes. I mean, it's not quite a GB highlight, but it is a America highlight, and for the Western world, I think the re-election of President Trump is incredible and will transform the West, which needs to happen. And he's actually been responsible for, I would argue, giving the West a fighting chance.
I'd agree.
Chloe?
I think slightly similar to Alex, but a bit later down the line. Recently, when we saw Reform come second in two big polls, that for me was a moment where I thought, wow, they actually really could pull this off and be the official opposition in 2029. At the time of the general election, I thought, wow, great, they've got 5 seats, that's great progress. But I still didn't really think they had a chance of, ending up with Nigel in number 10. But now it looks like it could genuinely happen and we could break the uni-party system.
Charlie, any highlights? I don't think you can remember this year, can you?
Well, I'm trying to forget it, because I totally disagree with Benjamin. This was not a Labour win. This was a Tory loss. And it highlighted the political lack of trust within that party that now needs to obviously rebuild all that trust. Nobody voted in their drones for Labour. They just wanted to get rid of the Tories. And what they've been left with is a government that's come in having lied to the British people to say they weren't going to put up national insurance contributions.
To the farmers.
They did. And, we're seeing this time and time again, that the Labour government was going to protect pensioners, the winter fuel allowance. Everything that the Tory party said was going to happen under a Labour government is happening, but trust was so broken because of the last few years of the Tory government. People weren't prepared to listen, and that is a great shame.
Oh, bless you. One day you'll get to the dispatch box.
All right. Coming up next...
That's a cafe.
In tonight's extended show, we'll be answering your questions for tonight's panel for a full hour of your voices. I can't wait. No topics off limits. We're raring and ready to go. Don't move a muscle. I'll see you in 3.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is still the Saturday 5, aren't you lucky? I'm Darren Grimes, along with Alex Armstrong, Chloe Dobbs, Charlie Rowley and Benjamin Butterworth. For the next hour, we'll be taking on your questions from home in tonight's Ask the Five, and we can't wait to get stuck into those. It's 8 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. Graham has written in, by the way, and Graham says, tell Charlie that I would vote for him if he walked towards the light and moved to Reform UK.
Well, thank you very much.
I think we've seen the light once or twice. Right. Plenty of fun just around the corner, my friends. First of all, though, we're going to get you Saturday night news with the brilliant Sam Francis.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has apologised to Azerbaijan for a Christmas Day plane crash that killed, sadly, 38 people. But he stopped short of admitting that Russia was to blame. The aircraft, reportedly hit by shrapnel from Russian air defence systems, crash-landed in Kazakhstan after being forced to divert from Chechnya. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Moscow of spreading disinformation, saying the damage did resemble a missile strike. US officials have also said Russia is responsible, while Azerbaijan believes the crash was caused by external interference. Investigations are now underway, with various teams examining the crash site. Nigel Farage says that Elon Musk is an absolute hero to young voters and claims he'll help Reform UK to win them over. In an interview with The Telegraph, the Reform UK leader hinted that Mr Musk could make a reasonable-sized donation, insisting it would be legal and above board. It comes as Farage has demanded an apology from Kemi Badenoch after she accused Reform of faking membership numbers. The Tory leader says Reform's online tally overtaking registered Tory members, she says, smells of fakery. Farage, though, has denied those claims, calling them baseless. Heavy fog has continued to cause delays and cancellations at some of the UK's busiest airports today. The majority of flights at Gatwick and Stansted were affected this afternoon, and delays are predicted late into tonight. A number of other delays were also reported at Manchester and Birmingham airports, with dozens of flights delayed at Heathrow. Well, the knock-on effects from Friday's delays also meant planes and pilots were out of position today, leaving some passengers stranded. Earlier, independent travel correspondent Simon Calder told us people need to check before they travel.
We saw over 150 cancellations yesterday, 48 from Gatwick, to and from Gatwick, 42 at London City Airport, 40 at London Heathrow, plus some at Manchester, Luton and other airports. And on top of that, I'm afraid Saturday hasn't begun brilliantly. British Airways has cancelled 18 flights so far to and from Heathrow, another 4 at Gatwick, and there's cancellations also at London City. So if you are flying today, good luck.
Simon Calder there speaking to us earlier. Well, boost growth or get out of the way. That is the message from Sir Keir Starmer to UK regulators. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Business Secretary have all asked watchdogs, including Ofgem and Ofwat, to propose pro-growth reforms by mid-January. It follows figures that show the UK economy flatlined between July and September. Labour, though, says it is pulling every lever to deliver the highest sustained economic growth in the G7. The Conservatives blame the government's policies for stalling progress. GB News can reveal today that 1,300 migrants have now crossed the English Channel since Christmas Day, as hundreds more crossed today. It comes as the Home Office confirmed 305 people arrived yesterday in 5 small boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for scrapping Conservative measures like the Rwanda plan, saying that Labour's approach is an insult to the British people. The Prime Minister, though, has promised to smash the gangs, but that comes as more than 22,000 people have so far arrived since he took office, up 25% on last year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for another very lively hour. We usually run a segment in this show called Ask the Five, and your contributions recently have been brilliant. So we thought we would honour you tonight and we'll be answering your questions for a whole hour. So I hope they're Ofcom compliant. Let's, without further ado, Ask the Five. Right, your first question comes from a viewer called Andrew.
On a scale of 0 to 10, I'd like to ask the panel what they think of Keir Starmer's time in office so far and what they estimate it could be for next year.
Well, before we, like a pack of rabid lions, tear into that one, Benjamin, do you want to give the Labour line?
It's like being on Radio 4's Any Questions, this, isn't it? Well, I think that the economy is everything, quite frankly. It seems obvious, but the fact is that they've had all these tax rises, all these difficult decisions, getting rid of the winter bonuses for wealthy retirees. I think these are good things that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have done, but there's going to be all hell break loose if it doesn't start to pay off. So one of the things Keir Starmer says is that your take-home pay needs to rise faster. For loads of people, it's been stagnant since 2008. That needs to change. That's something people need to feel. And the other thing is, maybe the other guys will mention this, but the boats. I think we are underestimating how angry people at home, regular folk, are about the boats. The idea we can't control borders is a problem. And I think Keir Starmer's being naive by not putting that in his pledges. I think it might come home to roost in the next 12 months.
So you think actually they could be punished for that?
I think they'd be punished, but look, I think that they have a better idea. I mean, look, the deportation flights, they've deported more people in single days than have ever happened before.
Yeah, voluntarily. They left voluntarily. They weren't forced to leave. These are people that are leaving with 3,000 quid in their pocket. They'll probably come back.
Hang on, the 3,000 quid was the two people that were deported under the Rwanda scheme. Managing to get people out of the country is what we need to do. Barack Obama did more than Donald Trump, and so did Joe Biden. And I think Keir Starmer will do more than Boris Johnson.
OK. Charlie?
Well, I mean, on a scale of 0 to 10, I mean, it's hard to get into positive figures, isn't it? You know, because they're just going backwards. You know, this is a government that said that they weren't going to slap on taxes. They've slapped on the taxes. They said they were going to protect the pensioners. They scrapped the winter fuel allowance. They said they were going to be the most rural, protecting the rural environment. They've now taxed farmers, the people that keep our food on our tables. You know, they let prisoners out early. They scrapped the Rwanda scheme from day one. The only deterrent, as you rightly said, Benjamin, it's what people care about, stopping people coming into this country illegally.
Just to be clear.
And they scrapped the deterrent from day one, the first thing they did. How on earth can anybody rate them at all? And I think if the Bank of England, because you're right, it is all about the economy as well, you know, the Bank of England downgrading growth from 0.3% to 0.
It's anemic.
It is nothing.
It's Ozempic.
So, and this is what we're going into in 2025. I do worry for this government. I worry on a personal level because I'm a nice person. For Rachel Reeves as a Keir Starmer, I think Rachel won't be in her job. Rachel from accounts, I don't think she'll be there next year.
Well, she can go back to Halifax.
Can I just point out that if you have a problem with people coming over in small boats, then you might want to explain the 120,000 you let in between 2018 and July of this year.
Well, it's a problem. There's no getting away from it. It's a problem, Benjamin, and that's why there was the Rwanda policy in place to deport these people. That's why we had the Bibi Stockholm, which, you know, all the left is up in arms, said that it should be scrapped because that wasn't a pleasant sort of...
all the money and no idea, Charlie.
Well, at least we had ideas, but it was scrapped from day one by this Labour government, which is why, you know, the migrants are up in arms saying, oh, yes, what an easy pull to come to Britain is.
I think, thank you to Andrew for his question, but I think I would give them minus if I could, if I was allowed to in your question, your scale there, because actually I think his time in office has been utterly transformative, just not in the way in which Labour said it would be transformative. I think this is a deeply authoritarian government. I think that this is a government that doesn't care about liberty. I think it's a government that wants to take us back into the EU by the back door. I think they don't give a flying flamingo about democracy. They know they're going to be here till 2029, and they think the right is going to be split by 2029 to such an extent that they get back in. That's what they're banking on. And I bet you my bottom dollar that it won't be Keir Starmer by 2029. They'll get rid of him because he is a liability. He's already one of the most popular leaders that this country has ever seen in modern political history. Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
I think you mean unpopular, though.
Well, unpopular, yes, that is what I mean.
I was almost in agreement.
6 hours. Chloe?
I mean, I would give him a -5 out of 10, and it will probably be worse next year. I mean, you've seen his approval ratings. They are not going to recover from that. I think what really really makes me angry, and what has made the whole country angry, is just the scale of the hypocrisy. They have broken so many promises, done so many things that they pointed their fingers at the Tories for doing previously, and they really, really have shown that they're just like the rest of them. People were hoping that this was the party of change. They used that word change in their election campaign, and they have shown to be pretty disappointing.
Well, what we didn't realise is that when he kept saying change, change, he was asking for your change.
Yes, your change.
We didn't realise he was just asking for a few coppers or whatever you've got going, especially if you're a pensioner. Right.
We've been very short-changed.
Alex, I've totally forgotten. Did we go to you first?
No, it's Benjamin.
Alex, you go.
Well, look, I'm going to give them a big fat 0, and they only get slightly positive figures because they're not the Tories, who are just as bad, quite frankly, in government as this Labour Party's been. It's been Tory continuity, should I even say. Look, I think Keir Starmer has done an abysmal job. He is not a leader. He's an administrator of this country. He is a lawyer and will not change. He's dull, uninspiring, a little bit like the budget that's come out.
I thought you were going to say Benjamin.
No, Benjamin at least has got a witty joke or two. Keir Starmer's about as inspiring as a dry, wetting puddle on a rainy day. And quite frankly, I think this Labour government is going to be finished before it's even gotten started. And I said this right at the start of Keir Starmer's premiership, that he was unpopular in the Labour ranks then, and I believe he's even more unpopular within the ranks now.
Okie dokie. Right, let's have a look at what Lars has to say.
Hi, it's Lars. I'm in Cancun in the Riviera Maya, normally from Windsor. My question to the panel is, given the level of illegal immigration and rising crime levels, is it time for the UK to introduce a national identity card?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Lars is asking about national identity cards, and you've mentioned this already, actually.
Yeah.
Given the level of illegal immigration, Tony Blair, actually, who tried to push these through whilst he was in government, is arguing that this would be a solution to tackling illegal immigration, because you'd be able, and rising crime, because you'd say, where's your papers? And if they can't provide the papers, well, you know, they don't have a right to be here. So is it the fix?
Well, it's a ploy. The reason why Tony Blair is so big on pushing immigration all of a sudden, despite letting in millions himself, is because it suits his agenda. And the agenda is to get you all to have ID cards. Well, wake up, everybody. You've got identification. Many of you will have a driver's licence and a passport. You don't need more ID. And what that will mean is we're entering the final stages of democracy, where you are forced to identify yourself to police officers. The reality is, to stop illegal migrants, we need borders. We need a border control. It's simple as that. We don't need new forms of ID. What's that going to do? Do you put a police officer at the end of every road and they check everyone who walks around? That's not going to work.
But, Chloe, the fact of the matter is that the Estonians have been doing this since, someone will correct me, 2007, off the top of my head. And the Estonians have found it phenomenally successful, this digital ID that they've got, because it allows them to access things like a bank account very easily, because they just use their online logins. Now, do you see the trade-off between, and there is a trade-off, I accept that, an infringement on liberty, as Alex has articulated, with ease of access and actually border security as well? Do you see the merits of digital ID, or are you of the view that this is an authoritarian nightmare?
I mean, I absolutely see merits to it. And it's always hard to tell with these things. Will you actually, if you introduce this, go down the slippery slope and end up into some kind of draconian society? I'm not sure if that would happen. I absolutely think that it would be a bad idea to make this a mandatory thing. I think it's OK to make it mandatory for people to have some form of ID and say, OK, well, if you haven't got a driver's licence or a passport, then you've at least got to have something on your phone. I wouldn't mind having the option of having in my Apple wallet, because I'm lazy and I always forget my purse, to be able to show when I buy something at a shop. You know, you have your, the post office, for example, has like a digital ID thing to go collect a parcel. I wouldn't mind that. That would make my life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah, if you're a Labour voter, you don't turn up to the ballot box with your ID, because apparently that's racist.
Exactly. I think that you should have to have identity to vote.
Of course.
So people need to have some form of identity, and if that means giving people the option to have something on their phone, that's fine. But should it be mandatory?
But
Absolutely
Charlie,
not.
The fact of the matter is, you know, 2 minutes ago they were saying that voter ID is racist, and now they're saying it's a good idea to combat illegal immigration. Surely they're now racist, are they?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think that ID in certain areas does actually work, and actually to be able to say who you to say that you are who you say you are in order to vote in our democracy, I think is just a given because of the fraud that takes place. I mean, I'm not sure, actually, where we go on this one now, because, you know, it's a bit like turning up to an airport, you know. I'm very happy to be patted down at an airport. In fact, it might be the only reason I turn up, even without a ticket. But, you know, because I have nothing to declare, and I'm happy to see that security and there'll be people that are always a bit funny about it because they think, well, I'm innocent until proven guilty, and you can't search me because of X, Y, Z. But we have to work out as a society: do we actually just bite the bullet and say, you know what, I don't like the digital process. I don't think actually we've got the infrastructure for it, and I think it would be susceptible to hacking and bad actors and bad states that take all of our information. But do we actually want a situation where we do actually now issue ID cards, where we have some form of identification purely to root out people that are here illegally or people that shouldn't be here, in order to make sure that we're getting back to the kind of country that we want to be, where we do have protection over our borders?
Charlie Humpty says ID cards are irrelevant. If we do... No, Humpty.
Sorry.
If we do find someone without ID, we can't deport them anyway. So what's the point? I mean...
Well, that's a very good question, and that's why, you know, all of these things, there's no silver bullet, I don't think, but all of these things should add up to making our borders secure and being able to have the ability...
There is a silver bullet, though, Charlie. Just deport them back to where they came from, and we won't have the problem of having to worry about whether the rest of the country should forfeit their liberty for identity.
Well, that would mean Keir Starmer ignoring the ECHR, which ain't going to happen, is it?
Here's the reason you need identity cards, because you can't deport them back when they're here illegally because you don't know where they are, right? They disappear into the annals of illegal activity and of crime. And, you know, a fun fact, actually, Charlie, you'll enjoy this. In the last Parliament, more Tories were suspended from the House of Commons than regular voters were prosecuted for electoral fraud. So, you know, maybe the problem was Conservative MPs, not regular voters. Now, when it comes to this question of ID, it's so normal in other countries, right? And we, since the Tony Blair age, now that we have smartphones, everyone uses facial ID, a little passcode to do anything and everything, things as mundane as picking up your post, right? And so the fact is, the reason a lot of these illegal migrants, you know, some of them are economic migrants, right? They come here for jobs, for money, for work, even when it's illegal. And so if you say that they have to provide these ID cards, it makes it so much easier for authorities, for police, to check up on phony employers that are putting these people in work. And then if they can't get a job, they're not going to come here.
But that's rubbish.
And that is how it works. That's why it works. Estonia is a libertarian country, right? It's built on the ideas of Adam Smith. It ain't some communist country. It hates communism.
Benjamin, when you...
And they've done this and worked.
Alex, answer that, because Estonia fought off communism and they don't see this as an authoritarian putsch.
Well, look, every country has the right to decide what it does. However, I'll argue against that final point, Benjamin, because when anyone gets a job, they have to provide their right to work, which is an identified case. Well, but that's the duty of the employer, and that's not going to force the employer, because there are ID cards all of a sudden, to do that. So it doesn't. We're not solving any problems here.
But it would, because when a copper can turn up and say, right, show me your ID card, that's a lot easier than asking to go through all the paperwork.
All right, okie dokie. Benjamin's coming knocking on Alex's door. Papers, please. Still to come tonight, we'll be answering more of your questions, so don't move a muscle. And Dastardly says, is it worth me messaging my comments in because they're all videos? No, I think it is worth you commenting because, you know, if it's good enough, Dastardly, I'll get it on the box. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. And joining me now to discuss this is the motoring journalist, Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are. And I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. Yeah. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five and a special hour of Ask the Five. Before we get to our next question, which is from Norma, I want to read out. Raymond says, I've got no problems with ID cards. What have you to hide? Otherwise, postal voting is the most dishonest way of voting. Now, that's where there is rigged voting. Maureen says, ID cards are essential nowadays. Only criminals would object to them.
Oh.
We're checking your hard drive later, Alex. And, well, not like that, to be clear. That sounds quite sinister.
Just to be clear from my end as well, nothing like that.
Jeanette says, why would I need an ID to prove I'm not an illegal immigrant?
Yeah, well, that's what an illegal immigrant would say.
Well...
That's the problem, right?
And one of our viewers says, ID cards, great idea, but there are more downsides to them, like stolen identities.
Yep.
This digital age is so easy to hack. But I'm afraid you could say that about absolutely everything in modern life.
You can't hack a physical passport, though.
Yeah, no, but you can, because whenever you check into a hotel, you have to hand over a copy of your passport and they photocopy it. And I always think, you know, there could be 12 people pretending to be Benjamin Butterworth out there.
All right, keep your replies coming in.
Oh, God forbid.
Lord help us. It'd be like that Wallace and Gromit special with all the little monsters, all the little gnomes.
All right, here's our question from Norma.
Hi guys, as you can see I'm by the sea. I'm from Italy, and in Italy the dress code for the beach is pretty severe. You're not allowed to go topless on the promenades or above the beach. Here in Gran Canaria, anything goes. I mean, the women walk around with virtually nothing on, just a thong. They go in supermarkets, everywhere, main streets. Who's got it right, the Spaniards or the Italians?
So the question there, in Italy, they're very conservative in their dress, but in Gran Canaria, she says they're walking into the supermarkets in a thong. Charlie, as a man that's walked around Gran Canaria in a thong, can I ask, are you with the Italians or the folks in Gran Can?
Well, I'll be on the first flight out to the Spanish Balearics.
He's going after the show, actually.
Yes. I actually am a bit of a prude, I think.
Ooh.
Obviously, people go to the beach, they obviously take your top off, you're in your shorts or your bikini top or whatever it is. But I do think that there is an element of just sunbathe and, that's absolutely fine. But I'm not entirely sure why people feel the need necessarily to, go full on nude or whatever it is. What are those nudist beaches and things like that?
He's pretending not to know.
What are those nudist beaches?
Being in an environment like a
These
shop.
don't get tan lines.
Well, no, I just think it's sort of. I just cover up, you know. I just don't. Why would you want to walk around a shop? I mean, if you've left the beach and you're going into a shop where I imagine there's air conditioning in some of these hot places, why would you want to be sort of, you know, exposed as much as possible? I don't know. I feel it's a bit sort of. I'm just maybe I'm a bit of a prude, but I just think, you know, it's always better to cover up.
I think I agree with you.
I think, when you buy your knickknacks, you don't want to see knockers alongside them, do you? I think probably a bit far, but, you know...
I'm in there for 2 weeks and a veg, but...
You know, I think shops probably doesn't work, right? I'm with Italy, but Italy is a very conservative society, you know, and actually France is another example. They've banned things like the burkini. They've gone in the other way. I mean, is that really a reasonable way to behave? I think probably not. I've spent a lot of this year, when not lecturing about carbon emissions, travelling the Middle East. And they obviously have very strict dress codes. And actually, I quite admire the way some of them dress. Some of those women look beautiful in those covered-up outfits. But ultimately, you know, the lady that sent the video in is clearly very beautiful. So I suspect people might not complain about her. But the truth is, you know, if you've not been on the Ozempic and you've got a bit of flab, that's when people take the issue, isn't it?
That's the thing. I hate when I see people in bikinis at the beach in summer when they, you know, they've clearly had a few too many mince pies over Christmas and haven't worked them off.
Just name me.
Please only strip off if you've got a good bod is all.
But how? So you're basically precluding fat people from the beach?
Yeah. No, they can come to the beach, but you can...
Well, what are they going to wear?
Wear a one-piece...
bikini?
Wear a one-piece swimsuit.
Chloe will be stood at the entrance to the beach with the fat jabs.
With the Ozempic bowl. You need an ID card to get onto the beach.
More seriously, I think in the area of social media, girls recognise, the fewer clothes you wear, the more likes you get. But they don't realise you're getting attention from the wrong kind of people. And so girls think it's good for them to just walk around with nothing on. But
Barbara asks, was that a real person? Well, yes, Norma sent that video in. We haven't made an AI Norma. AI Norma in Grand Can. Alex, what do you say to Norma's question? You're someone that is quite comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah, well... Look, I mean, I think when you're going inside somewhere, if you're going to a restaurant, all right? You're going to a restaurant or somewhere
posh. Where that was going.
Right? You've got to dress up. I don't want to see everyone's naked bodies when I'm eating dinner. It's disgusting, you know, come on. I think, but on the beach, do what you like. Do what you like, as long as you're not upsetting somebody. But when you go inside, just put a T-shirt
Claire
on.
agrees. She says, ooh, who wants to see all those people walking around without their clothes
90% of people are not nice to look at.
I think Speedos should be outlawed.
But, you know,
Speedos should be outlawed.
Speedos should be outlawed, actually.
Yeah.
I'd make them illegal.
Benjamin's been talking about the idea of outlawing bikinis, but I just think we need to outlaw.
I'm going to defend the tub.
It's horrifying. It's traumatising for me.
I'm going to defend the tub because I've been on a couple of weekends in Benidorm, and you get lots of Brits there, you know, and the blokes like to wear their swimming shorts, have a beer with their top off. That's how they feel comfortable. That's how they differentiate from being back in Blighty.
All right. A friend of mine went on holiday to Japan, and he got starkers at one point in some kind of sauna. Nothing rude. And he says he felt very good about himself. So, yeah.
Konnichiwa.
Maybe
good for him.
Right, here's a question from... Who is this one from? Sandra. Xander, sorry, not Sandra. Xander.
How long do you five think the Conservative Party will remain a credible opposition? I've just recently joined the Reform Party with the under-25 membership offer, and speaking to people in the Richmond constituency of North Yorkshire, it really does seem clear that they are turning into the only real opposition. And now with Starmer dictating what we do and say from number 10, surely now it's time for serious political debate and discussion.
Look at all that.
Good for you.
Look at all that before Benjamin saying no young people joining Reform. There's another one just there.
And in the former Prime Minister's constituency of Richmond.
But it's still his constituency, is it not?
Well, former Prime Minister.
Former Prime
It still
Minister,
is his constituency for now, until he goes to California. But Xander says, how long do you think the Conservatives will remain a credible opposition? Well, I think, Xander, I think they're already not a credible opposition, to be perfectly honest. I haven't seen much in the way of opposing yet. I know Kemi Badenoch says we've got to give them time. They need patience to work out their policy proposals. But Britain is going to hell in a handcart right? We need something right now.
It's not difficult to oppose this government either, and there's some easy wins the Tories have just completely missed out on. Winter fuel payments, where were the Tories during that? There's complete disarray, while Kemi Badenoch has multiple different rounds of some sort of quangos deciding what policies come out of the Conservative Party. I mean, look, Reform are getting on with the job of actually opposing the government, and with only 5 MPs, they're doing a damn right better than the 120-something the Tories have got.
But, Benjamin, this goes to show that Reform have got the youth.
Well, look, I mean, like Xander, I got involved in politics when I was quite young, and I imagine that's probably true of lots of us on the panel. So good on you for caring about the world around you, regardless of the conclusions you come to. I think the truth is that Kemi Badenoch is really poorly qualified to be leader of the opposition. You know, she understands at least that people don't trust the Tories, but she has no ability to get people interested in them, get them a bit excited about them. And I think in that vacuum is where Reform will start to clean up. I think that's where their opportunity is. And Nigel Farage understands that every day he's in the papers, he is claiming those voters. So I think there's a lot of truth to it.
Well, I think, yeah, I totally agree with Benjamin there about Xander being a young person getting involved in politics, absolutely vital. But I think the one thing that other people will say, and look, you know, you're absolutely right, the Conservative Party faces a problem where it's been divided for so long, and we know divided parties don't win elections. It's got a thrashing at the last election. So naturally, things are going to take time, I think, before you sort of, you know, heal those wounds. But that is the one thing that Kemi doesn't have on her side. I agree with that because of the vacuum that Nigel Farage is able to fill. But I still think there are many people out there who have voted Conservative in the past, that certainly voted in 2019, who want to see the Conservative Party back again to be that credible opposition. But Kemi's only been in the job a couple of months. I think there are people out there that are prepared to give her the benefit of the doubt, to find her feet.
Right, we don't need the Conservative Party. I just accidentally almost took a sip out of this, and it's got Nana Akwia's lippy all over it. So if you saw me pulling a funny
pull
face...
the other one. That's yours. That's yours.
my lippy. Right, Chloe, sorry, I interrupted.
I think what will make a big difference, Xander, as to whether Reform will replace the Conservatives as the main opposition is whether the Labour Party do anything about mass migration or not. I think they probably won't, but they have had, as Nigel and his party have been zooming up in the polls, Red Wall MPs, remember that Reform came second to Labour in 98 seats, a lot of those in the Red Wall. They've been saying to the government, you guys really need to get your act together on migration, both legal and illegal, else we are doomed. So maybe they'll listen to that, and then Reform's main tagline, stop the boats and reduce migration, won't be relevant anymore. And
I thought what was interesting was Xander said he just joined the political party because of the fact that they've reduced the membership to £10, I believe it is, for people under the age of 25. So, you know, a good way of boosting youth participation. It's clearly had an impact on Xander himself in a very Tory part of the country, it has to be said. Right, OK. We're going to move on now from Xander, but we'll be back in 3 short minutes. So don't move a muscle. This is the Saturday 5, only on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland. That will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland, some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camila Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five and a special hour of Ask the Five. Our next question comes from Fergus.
Yvette Cooper's intention to have an anti-misogyny law and Labour and the King talking about diversity, could this law conflict with patriarchal societies recently arrived in Britain?
Okay, interesting question. So the question was from Fergus. Fergus says, given Yvette Cooper's intention of having an anti-misogyny law and the statements about diversity by Labour and His Majesty the King, will this cause conflict with some patriarchal cultures now in Britain? So Fergus is sending us back to Bradford.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're talking of Bradford. I mean, look, I think the reality is that the diversity experiment has failed and that even British people no longer want this experiment to continue. And in my opinion, whether you're from a Muslim background, which is more patriarchal than, let's say, a Christian one, or if you're from a Christian background, you, at the end of the day, you want to be prosperous, you want your children to be prosperous, and we have seen the effects of mass migration, and those effects end up making us all poorer and worse off, and it means that the cultural divide in our country is getting worse. The failure of assimilation has proven that time and time again. So no, I don't think it's going to make the ends difference whatsoever.
And on that point, Alex, I mean, viewers, I was on air after the King's speech, and viewers at home did not mince their words on the substance of the King's speech. You know, many were accusing him of actually being detached from the real concerns of everyday people. You know, go tell the girls in Rotherham that multiculturalism and diversity has been an overwhelming success story for Britain. I thought it was a speech that was incredibly divisive, actually, and I don't understand those who say it was a lovely speech of lightness and love. What planet are you living on? What have you not seen in this country over the last few years? Every week in London, hate marches calling for the extermination of Jews, and you tell me that multiculturalism has been an overwhelming success story. What planet are you living on?
But to go back to the question that the viewer asked about these anti-misogyny laws, I think it's a really good idea, and that's why loads of women support it. You know, the idea that you can wolf whistle or demean a woman in public should be along the lines of making a racist slur or a homophobic slur in public and trying to undermine someone's existence. And the question about, are there certain communities where that will cause friction? Well, you know, it'd be dishonest to say anything other than, yes, there are sections of society. That includes, by the way, some white people, older white people, where those attitudes still linger. But if it if the accusation about an anti-misogyny law is that it would make life harder for conservative Muslims or very conservative Jewish people, for example, well, I don't think that's a problem. Isn't that the point of the law, is to coax people out of the behaviour, to put them off behaving like that? And so if it stops some corners of society being profoundly misogynistic and sexist, well, that is more reason to have the law.
Well, I'm glad you said misogynistic, you know, because there isn't a lot of acknowledgement from the Labour side of the political argument that it is a uniquely misogynistic culture that we've imported to Britain.
Well, lots of Muslims in this country aren't like that, you know, millions of them, and they wouldn't be affected by this. But it's also...
Look at the polling from Muslim voters.
Well, we only have to see how many Sharia courts there are. We are the Western capital of Sharia courts to know that this is a problem. Whether or not I think the law is going to do anything about that, I don't actually believe it will, because how is this enforceable?
I think it'll be people like us
of course it will be. Of course it will be.
For making a joke, right? For saying, you know, are you Arthur or Martha?
And that's where, and that's where I think.
And are you?
and I think that this is what I take a slightly different approach. I think what Alex said is absolutely right, but I think we can be successful as a diverse country. If you take the United States of America, it's built on immigration, but what the difference is in the US is that there is this patriotism and this love of their country, and they have that United States flag flown absolutely everywhere that everybody can buy into. And if you don't like it, you lump it. Here in this country, we seem to have been far too tolerant, I think, of other cultures where we don't learn from each other. We've allowed communities to, you know, speak a different language other than English, where we have, as we say, all these...
Like Welsh.
And, but Welsh is part of the United Kingdom. It's always been part of the United Kingdom, but it's English and Welsh. And
I think you're wrong.
But not cultures... But you have to speak English. You have to speak, if you're coming into this country. But you have to play by the rules. You have to play by the rules like everybody else. And when that fails, that's when you get this heated discussion.
Let's hear what Chloe has to say.
Look, I do not want cultures in this country that treat women poorly.
Exactly.
And
do you want misogyny laws, though?
Well, no, that's what I'm getting to is I reckon if we had misogyny laws, what it would probably look like is, you know, women who don't get the job they want, taking the person to court, saying, you didn't choose me just because I'm a woman, when actually it's because you were the poorer candidate. And people will be scared to pick white men as for jobs. And we already have enough of a problem with that, and I don't want that to get any worse.
That's just wrong.
Obviously, if you beat a woman or do something horrendous like that, then already the law deals with you.
A hate crime law can't be used in that context, so that's just a ridiculous comment. But I think what Charlie says about multiculturalism, I tell you what, the people that are most, you know, the Windrush generation, for example, they're the most likely to have a picture of the King or the Queen of their house and love British traditions and the royal family.
Right, we'll see what Adik has to say now.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question this gorgeous panel. The state of the modern architecture in the UK is dismal, public, commercial and especially residential, ugly, uninspiring and less than cheap looking. What does the panel think can be done to make British architecture great again?
It is a real problem, and you know what, they're knocking down Marks and Spencer on...
Good.
Where is it?
Oxford Street.
What they're replacing it with.
Monstrosity.
M&S flagship store. It's got a problem with asbestos, and it's very inefficient to run, and so they're rebuilding it.
But they're rebuilding it with something that looks bloody awful.
I mean, I think he has a point that it's very unadventurous, a lot of architecture these days. I mean, I don't love these massive glass buildings that we get in cities everywhere, but I still think the bigger problem is that we don't have enough homes, right? And I would rather they just go up than they be unnecessarily expensive because of how beautiful they are.
But you don't have to do things ugly. Like, Alex has just come back from Hungary, and what they're doing is nothing short of incredible. You know, turning these Soviet-looking monstrosities into beautiful buildings that are reminiscent of how England used to look.
They're going a step further.
Have pride in place.
They're going a step further. Everything that was bombed to obliteration, they are rebuilding in the same image as it was before, and it's beautiful, beautiful historical architecture. So it's totally doable, but there's no political will to do that in this country.
But it's not politics, is it?
Well, it sort of is, and it's sort of. And I do agree with you that we need to build more homes. desperately we need to be building thousands more a day, frankly, to cope with this massive increase. But we can't, hang on, just a point, because I think that we've got down this road of Americanising our cities, these big glass buildings, the new ones just approved in London. It's dreadful, and it means nothing about Britain. You could knock it down and put it anywhere else in the world, and it has no symbolism. And so I think we need to find something within that. And in New York, you look at the Gothic, massive skyscrapers they used to build. We can do it.
So the background to that question, the government, in its plan for house building, because it wants to do 1.5 million new homes, it took out the word beautiful in the expectation of what building should be. Now, that's partly because it's not a legally binding word. How do you judge that in a planning application? But, you know, I think the question is whether there's the effort from those people building the houses. I think they don't care because they know we're so desperate to just have a building.
Well, that's the thing. So I was talking to a friend who's lived in Germany and Austria, and he said after he's been in houses in Germany and Austria, he cannot believe the homes that we live in this country and the homes that house builders get away with selling. There, you barely ever even have to turn the heating on because the walls are so thick, everything's insulated properly. We're paying insane amounts of money for just these cardboard boxes.
OK, we'll leave that one there. Barbara, by the way, for a word in support of what Charlie was saying on Kemi, she says Kemi is the only one who spoke about other cultures and problems with them. Farage is frit. So that's one opinion in favour of what Kemi Badenoch has had to say over recent months. Still ahead, we're going to answer more of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics off limits. What have you unleashed upon us in this part? You're with the Saturday Five live on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, it's going to remain fairly unsettled for parts of Cyprus and Greece. This area of cloud and rain continues to linger here. But for much of Italy, Spain and Portugal, a fairly quiet couple of days with some late winter sunshine here. A few showers for Madeira, maybe just creeping into Canaries. But as we approach New Year's Day itself, it should be fairly fine and dry across the Canaries.
Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, and engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all 3 of them, through a thing called a Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early and especially about getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five and the last part of tonight's extended Ask the Five. I'm very sad to leave you. If you could pick anyone, comes this question. This is from Dick. If you could pick anyone who could lead you... sorry, I can't even read. If you could pick anyone who would lead us at this time, who would it be? Right, Dick asks that.
Sorry, can you say the question again?
If you could pick anyone who could... the question...
You can't read it.
The auto-cue.
If you could pick anyone, who would you choose to lead us?
Well,
this moment in time.
I get you. Okay.
Now.
Well,
Darren's run out of steam.
Honestly, thank God someone speaks English on this panel.
Sorry, Dick.
My view on multiculturalism is really changing. Look, I would say Wes Streeting, who is the Health Secretary. I think, he's from a council estate. He had a sort of relatively tough upbringing. I think he's got quite a rounded understanding of life. And as a cabinet minister, I think he's showing a lot of intellectual honesty. He's not afraid to disagree at times. And that's pretty unusual in politics. I think he's the one Labour politician who could really take on Nigel Farage's appeal.
And you know why? Because he rejects your wing of the loony party. He rejects you people saying that we should give trans kids medical interventions.
And he was willing to speak up on assisted dying as well. He's not just...
I've known Mr Streeting since I was a teenager, and I think we agree on lots of things, and he'd be a great Prime Minister.
Do you know who I'd have? Christopher Biggins. Because I think this country needs a bit of a laugh. Bit of a laugh.
Well, we don't get it from you, so...
Well, I just think, after a few months of a Labour government that has absolutely trashed the UK economy, that's got rid of the Rwanda deterrent, that's taking this country backwards, we just need someone with the chutzpah, the joy to bring...
we get it.
Let's just list our person, because we've got to move on. Jeremy Clarkson, I think I would have.
To annoy Benjamin, I'll pick Elon Musk.
Well, it's got to be Nigel Farage then with some cojones to get us through the next 4 years. That would be great.
All right, and now we've got a question from Susie. Susie says 2024 has been a roller coaster of a year, but what are your predictions for 2025? Well, Susie, my prediction is that the Labour government are going to look about as stable as one of those dinghies in the English Channel at any minute now, because they're really, really messing everything up, and I can't wait to see Karma come and meet them head on. Charles?
I think, as with every year in politics, there'll be cabinet resignations, but I think through just stories in the media, what people sort of dig deep on people, but I think Rachel Reeves will be the first big hitter to lose her job this year.
Right, we're just running out of time, so Benjamin?
I think the Ayatollah of Iran will fall, and there'll be progress in the long last in the Middle East, based on what's happened in the last few months.
And your kind of progress means Israel doing well as well, so that's good news for Israel. Chloe?
I think politically we're going to have more of the same from the government. The boats won't stop, the houses won't get built and whatnot. But I think what you will see changing is the support for reform. I think it's going to keep on zooming upwards.
I think one of the biggest things that's going to happen next year is Donald Trump is going to end the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Said he would.
Right, and now we've got a question that's come in from Ian. Ian says, as a born and bred Bradford septuagenarian... older person, I assume Alex has never... apologies if you're offended by that, Ian. I assume Alex has never visited the City of Culture. What I find unnerving is his totally accurate description of the city.
Well, you don't have to visit to look at the stats and know what's going on there, unfortunately.
Poor Bradford.
Yes, poor Bradford. I do love the people of Bradford, I must say.
They don't love you.
They probably don't love me anymore. No. But we have to be honest, don't we? We have to be honest.
All right. Well, yes, I mean, listen, I don't think it was on my list of British places to visit.
And it still isn't.
Soon, and it still isn't, I'm afraid to say. But I'm sure there are plenty of people, as Ian is, watching this show, who are from Bradford, so thank you very much for doing so. What will you be doing this New Year's Eve, Georgia asks. Georgia, I'll be on air. I'll be here with you, keeping you company. So I look forward to doing that. And I don't know what the rest of them are doing, but we're running out of time to ask them. So
You don't know and you don't care.
Next up, it's Ben Neal. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperature's not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north, so some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save